Hey everyone, I'm Mono Scaling. I'm here to guide you today. If you use this video to drift off to sleep, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now get comfortable and relax. Stu Rye 1. My name is Lily Brooks and I need to write this down while I still can. While I still remember. While the details are fresh, before they start slipping away like water through my fingers the way they always do. I'm 34 years old. I live in Houston. I work in corporate accounting. These are facts I repeat to myself every morning now, because sometimes I wake up and I don't know who I am. But I know other things. I know things I shouldn't know. 3 weeks ago, I loaded up my RV and drove to Atchafalaya Basin in Louisiana for a solo camping trip. I told my coworkers I needed to disconnect, get away from screens and spreadsheets for a while. That was true. But it wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was that I'd been having dreams about a place I'd never been, and I needed to see if it was real. The dream started 6 months ago. Always the same place. A camping area surrounded by cypress trees draped in Spanish moss, water the color of tea, the smell of decay and wet earth. In the dreams, I knew that place. I'd been there before. And in every dream, I died there. I didn't tell anyone about the dreams. What would I say? That I was having recurring nightmares about dying in a swamp? That I felt compelled to go there like something was pulling me back? They'd think I was losing it. Maybe I was. The drive from Houston to Atchafalaya took 6 hours. I had the directions memorized before I left, even though I'd never looked them up. I knew to take Highway 190 to Henderson, then turn south on Highway 352. I knew the camping area would be 3 miles past the gas station with the peeling blue paint. I knew all of this, and that was the first thing that should have made me turn around. But I didn't turn around, I kept driving. The camping area was exactly as I'd seen it in my dreams, a rough clearing with spaces for maybe 8 RVs, a communal bathroom facility that had seen better days, and a concrete boat launch that disappeared into dark water. Cypress trees surrounded everything, their knees jutting up from the shallow water at the edges of the clearing. Spanish moss hung in thick curtains from every branch. The air was heavy with humidity even though it was only April. I pulled into spot number 7. I knew it would be vacant. I knew the hookups would work, but the water would smell like sulfur. I knew that if I looked to my right, I'd see an RV with Minnesota plates, and to my left, a pop-up camper with a family from Texas. I was right about all of it. That should have been enough. That should have sent me running. But I'd driven 6 hours, and some part of me needed to prove that this was just coincidence, that I'd seen photos online or something, that there was a rational explanation. I set up my RV as the sun started to set. The family in the pop-up camper was making dinner. I could hear children laughing. To my right, the Minnesota RV was dark and quiet. Further down, there were 3 other rigs. A Class A motorhome, a small trailer, and another fifth wheel. I counted them. 8 total, including mine. All the spots were full. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed listening to the sounds of the swamp. Frogs, insects, things moving through water. Around midnight, I heard footsteps outside my RV. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling my rig. I looked out the window but saw nothing. The footsteps continued for maybe 10 minutes, then stopped. In the morning, I found boot prints in the mud around my RV. They circled it completely, always the same distance from the vehicle, like someone had walked around it measuring something. The prints were too large to be mine. I should mention something else. When I was 8 years old, my sister drowned. Her name was Claire, and she was 6. We were at a lake with our parents, and she wandered off while they were setting up the tent. They found her face down in the shallows 30 minutes later. I was supposed to be watching her. I was reading a book instead. I don't know why I'm telling you this, except that I kept thinking about Claire the entire time I was at Atchafalaya. I kept seeing her face in the dark water, kept hearing her voice in the wind moving through the moss. On the second day, I met the other campers. The family in the pop-up was the Hendersons, Kevin, Marla, and their 2 kids, 8-year-old Dylan and 6-year-old Emma. Emma reminded me of Claire. Same age, same dark hair, same gap between her front teeth. The Minnesota RV belonged to a retired couple, Tom and Susan Grant. They'd been traveling the country for 2 years trying to visit every state park. Atchafalaya was number 47. The Class A motorhome belonged to a man named Marcus Webb. He was in his 50s, traveling alone after his wife died of cancer the year before. He told me this within 5 minutes of meeting him, like he needed to explain why he was by himself. The small trailer belonged to 2 college kids, Jake and Riley, who were spending spring break camping and fishing. The 5th wheel belonged to another solo traveler, a woman named Christine Oakes, who said she was a writer working on a book about Southern folklore. I knew all their names before they introduced themselves. I knew Tom had a heart condition. I knew Christine was lying about being a writer. I knew Jake and Riley had stolen the trailer. I knew Marcus was planning to kill himself in the swamp. I didn't know how I knew these things. That afternoon, the Hendersons invited everyone to a communal dinner. We gathered around their fire pit and Marla served chili and cornbread. The kids ran around catching fireflies while we adults made small talk. It felt normal. It felt safe. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd done this before. Not déjà vu exactly. Something stronger. I knew what everyone would say before they said it. I knew Dylan would trip and skin his knee at exactly 8:47 p.m. I knew Emma would cry for her mother at 9:15. I was right both times. After dinner, I went back to my RV. I tried to read, but I couldn't focus. I kept looking at my phone, checking the time. At 11:23 p.m., someone would scream. I didn't know who or why, but I knew it was coming. At 11:23 p.m., someone screamed. I was out of my RV in seconds, along with everyone else. The scream had come from the direction of the boat launch. We all ran toward the water, flashlights bouncing through the darkness. Christine was standing at the edge of the water, her flashlight pointed at something in the shallows. As we approached, I could see what had made her scream. There was a body in the water. My stomach dropped. Not again, I thought. Not Claire again. But it wasn't a body. As we got closer, we could see it was just a floating log, covered in moss and debris that in the dark had looked like hair and clothing. Christine laughed nervously, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I'm sorry, I really thought—" We all went back to our rigs, except Marcus. He stayed by the water, staring out at the dark expanse of the swamp. I watched him from my window. He stood there for almost an hour, not moving. Then he walked back to his motorhome and I saw his silhouette through the window as he sat at his small table and put something to his head. I was out of my RV and pounding on his door before I could think about it. "Marcus! Marcus, don't!" The door opened. He was holding a phone to his ear, not a gun. He looked confused. "What's wrong?" I stood there, breathing hard, not knowing what to say. "I thought I heard—" "I'm fine," he said. "Just calling my daughter, she worries." I apologized and went back to my RV, my heart pounding. What was wrong with me? Why did I think he was going to shoot himself? Why was I so certain? That night I dreamed about Claire. She was standing in the water by the boat launch, her wet hair hanging in her face. She pointed at me and said, "You let me die. You'll let them all die." I woke up at 3:06 a.m. I knew it would be 3:06 before I looked at my phone. I lay in the dark, listening. Outside, something was moving between the RVs. Not the footsteps from the night before. This was different. Multiple somethings moving quickly, purposefully. I got up and looked out the window. In the faint moonlight, I could see shapes moving through the camping area. Dark shapes, roughly human-sized, but wrong somehow. They moved too smoothly, too quickly. They didn't make any sound. I watched them for maybe 5 minutes. They moved between the rigs, pausing at each one, as if checking something. When they reached my RV, one of them stopped and turned toward my window. I dropped to the floor, my heart hammering. I waited, not breathing, for something to happen. Nothing did. After a few minutes, I heard them moving away. I stayed on the floor until sunrise. In the morning, everyone's RV had symbols drawn on them in mud, crude circles with lines through them like target markers. My RV had 7 of them, one on each side and one on the roof. The Hendersons' pop-up had 4. The Minnesota RV had too. We all gathered to look at them, confused and unnerved. Probably kids from town, Kevin said, though he didn't sound convinced. Just messing with us. But these weren't teenage pranks. The symbols were too deliberate, too precise. And there were no tracks leading to or from any of the rigs. It was as if the things that made them had appeared and disappeared without touching the ground. Christine took photos of everything. "This is incredible," she said, her hands shaking slightly as she worked her camera. "This is exactly the kind of thing I'm researching. Local folklore talks about markers left by the swamp spirits, warnings to leave before..." "Before what?" Marla asked, her voice tight. Christine didn't answer. That was the day things started to accelerate. Time felt wrong. I'd look at my phone and see that hours had passed when it felt like minutes. Or minutes would stretch into what felt like hours. The sun seemed to move at irregular speeds across the sky. Around noon, or what my phone said was noon, though the sun's position suggested it should have been later, Emma went missing. The Hendersons were frantic. 1 minute she was playing with Dylan by their camper, the next she was gone. We all spread out to search, calling her name, checking the bathroom facility, the boat launch, the edges of the camping area where the swamp began. I knew where she was. I didn't know how I knew, but I did. I walked to the cypress tree that stood 20 yards past the boat launch, the one with the massive trunk and the hollow at its base. I looked inside the hollow. Emma was there, curled up, asleep. I reached in and shook her gently. Her eyes opened, unfocused. "Lily?" she said, though I'd never told her my name. "Are you going to die again?" My blood went cold. "Emma, what did you say?" But she was already scrambling out of the hollow, calling for her mom, acting like a normal 6-year-old who'd gotten lost and scared. Marla came running and scooped her up, crying. Kevin thanked me over and over. Emma looked at me over her mother's shoulder, and her eyes were wrong, too knowing, too old. That night I tried to leave. I packed up everything, disconnected from the hookups, and started my engine. But when I tried to drive out of the camping area, my RV wouldn't move forward. The engine was running fine. The transmission was working. But it was like the vehicle was stuck, even though there was nothing blocking the wheels. I tried for 30 minutes before giving up. When I put it in park, I saw Marcus standing outside his motorhome watching me. "It won't let you leave," he said. "Not until it's finished." "What won't let me leave?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just went back inside. I should explain something about the way time was working. It wasn't just moving at irregular speeds. It was looping. Small loops, mostly. I'd have a conversation with someone, and then 10 minutes later, we'd have the exact same conversation again. Word for word, and they wouldn't remember the first time. I'd set down my coffee mug, turn around, and it would be back in my hand, still warm, as if I'd never put it down. The loops were getting more frequent. And each time one happened, I remembered both versions, the original and the repeat. No one else seemed to notice. On the 4th day, though I'm not sure if it was really the 4th day or if days were looping too, Christine disappeared. We searched for her just like we'd searched for Emma, but this time we didn't find her. Her RV was open, her belongings scattered, her camera sitting on the table with the lens cap off. The last photo on the camera was of the woods at the edge of the camping area. In the photo, you could see shapes between the trees. Dark shapes. Watching. Christine came back 3 hours later. She walked out of the swamp, her clothes soaked, her hair plastered to her head. She was smiling. "Christine." Marcus ran to her. "Are you okay? What happened?" "I fell in the water," she said, still smiling. "But I'm fine now. I'm all better." Something was wrong with her voice. It was her voice, but flatter, like she was reading from a script. And she kept smiling, not a real smile, just her mouth in the shape of a smile, while her eyes stayed empty. That night, Christine killed Marcus. I didn't see it happen. I was in my RV trying to sleep when I heard the commotion. By the time I got outside, Tom was already calling 911, and Kevin was trying to perform CPR on Marcus while his kids screamed. Christine was standing 10 feet away, covered in blood, still smiling. "She just attacked him," Susan said, her voice shaking. "He was walking to the bathroom and she had a knife and she—" The police arrived 40 minutes later. They took Christine away, though she didn't resist. She got in the patrol car still smiling, still covered in Marcus's blood. The EMTs confirmed what we already knew. Marcus was dead, stabbed 17 times in the chest and abdomen. They asked us all questions, took our statements. They seemed just as confused as we were. Christine had no history of violence, no apparent motive. She just kept smiling and wouldn't explain why she'd done it. After the police left with Christine and Marcus's body, we all gathered again. Nobody wanted to be alone. The Hendersons had taken their kids inside the pop-up, but the rest of us stood in a tight circle near the bathroom facility, as if proximity to each other could protect us from whatever was happening. "We should leave," Tom said. "All of us, right now." I wanted to tell them it wouldn't work, that we couldn't leave. But I also wanted to try again, wanted to believe maybe this time would be different. We all went to our rigs and started packing. I watched the others disconnect their hookups, store their outdoor equipment, prepare to leave. I did the same. When we were ready, Kevin led the way in his truck pulling the pop-up camper. Tom and Susan followed in their motorhome. Jake and Riley went next in their trailer. I fell in at the end of the line. We made it maybe 50 yards down the access road before we all stopped. The road ahead was gone. Just gone. Where there should have been pavement leading back to Highway 352, there was swamp. Dark water and cypress trees stretched as far as we could see. The road behind us was still there, leading back to the camping area, but ahead there was nothing but swamp. "This isn't possible," Tom said, standing beside his motorhome, staring at the water. "The road was here. We drove in on this road." I looked at the GPS on my phone. According to it, we were in the middle of the highway, 50 miles from Atchafalaya Basin, but around us was only swamp. We turned around. We didn't discuss it. We just turned around and drove back to the camping area and parked in our same spots and shut off our engines. "What the fuck is happening?" Jake asked. He was 20 years old and trying hard not to cry. Riley had her arms wrapped around herself, rocking slightly. I knew what was happening, but I didn't know how to explain it. We were caught in something, a loop, a trap, a story that kept repeating. I'd been here before, I'd died here before, and now I was here again, and so were all of them. "This has happened before," I said quietly. They all looked at me. "What do you mean?" Susan asked. "I've been here before, I've lived this before, all of it. The boot prints around my RV, the shapes in the night, Emma getting lost. Christine disappearing and coming back wrong. Marcus dying. All of it." "That's not possible," Kevin said, but his voice was uncertain. "I knew your names before you told me. I knew about Tom's heart condition. I knew Marcus was planning to kill himself. I knew Christine wasn't really a writer. I knew—" I stopped, looking at Jake and Riley. "I knew you stole that trailer." Jake went pale. Riley took a step back. "How could you know that?" Tom asked. "Because I've lived this before. I don't know how many times, but I've been here before. And I died here. And I think we're all going to die here unless we can figure out how to break the loop." They wanted to not believe me. I could see it on their faces. But too much had happened that didn't make sense. They couldn't explain the road disappearing any more than they could explain the mud symbols or Christine's attack or any of the other impossible things. "Why?" Susan asked. "Why is this happening?" I thought about Claire, about how I'd let her drown while I sat reading a book, about the guilt that had followed me for 26 years. I think it's because of something I did, someone I let die. "What does that have to do with us?" Kevin asked, anger creeping into his voice. "Why are we being punished for something you did?" I didn't have an answer for that. That night, nobody slept. We stayed together in the open area between the rigs, keeping a fire going, keeping watch. The kids were inside the Hendersons' pop-up, hopefully asleep. The rest of us sat around the fire, exhausted and scared. Around midnight, Emma came out of the pop-up. She walked past her sleeping parents and came to stand by the fire. She was in her pajamas, her feet bare. Emma, honey, you should be in bed, Marla said. But Emma wasn't looking at her mother, she was looking at me. You remember now, she said, not a question, a statement. Remember what? I asked. What you did. What happens? You always remember too late. The other adults were staring at Emma, confused. She didn't sound like a 6-year-old. She sounded ancient. Emma, what are you talking about? Kevin asked. She finally looked at her father, and when she did, I saw that her eyes had changed. They were completely black now. No whites, no irises. Just solid black orbs reflecting the firelight. Marla screamed and grabbed for her daughter, but Emma moved away too quickly. She circled the fire and we all stood up, backing away. You let her die, Emma said, still looking at me. Your sister. You were supposed to watch her and you let her drown. You've been carrying that guilt for so long, it's been eating away at you, and guilt like that. It has power, it opens doors, it calls things. What things, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Us. The things that live in the spaces between moments. The things that feed on regret and feed on death and feed on time itself. You called us, and we answered. And now we're going to feast. Emma turned and walked toward the swamp. Marla started to follow her, but I grabbed her arm. That's not Emma anymore. That's my daughter, Marla screamed, trying to pull away. No, I said. It's not anymore. Kevin put his arms around his wife as we watched Emma disappear into the darkness beyond the boat launch. We could hear her laughing, a sound that didn't belong to any child. Dylan started crying inside the pop-up. Marla and Kevin ran to him, leaving the rest of us by the fire. This is insane, Jake said. This is fucking insane, we need to. He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes went wide. He looked down at his chest, where the handle of a knife was protruding. Riley screamed. Jake fell forward. Behind him stood Susan, covered in blood, smiling the same empty smile that Christine had worn. Tom grabbed for his wife, but she moved away with that same impossible speed Christine had shown. She slashed at Tom with the knife, catching his arm. He stumbled backward, blood pouring from the wound. We scattered. I ran for my RV, heard others running in different directions. Behind me, I could hear Susan's footsteps and that horrible laughing that sounded like Emma but wasn't Emma at all. I made it to my RV and locked the door. A few seconds later, something pounded against the metal, hard enough to make the whole vehicle shake. I looked out the window and saw Susan. Or what had been Susan. Her face was wrong now, stretched and distorted, that smile impossibly wide. She pounded on the RV for maybe 5 minutes, then moved away. I watched through the window as she walked toward Tom and Susan's motorhome. Tom had made it inside and locked the door. Susan circled the vehicle, trying each door, each window, patient and methodical. I looked around the camping area. Kevin's truck and pop-up were dark. Marcus's motorhome sat empty, crime scene tape still fluttering from where the police had secured it. The Minnesota RV had its lights on, Tom probably hiding inside. Jake and Riley's trailer was dark. I couldn't see either of them, but I'd seen Jake fall. He might already be dead. My hands were shaking. I tried my phone again, though I knew it wouldn't work. No signal. I tried the RV's radio. Just static. I heard a child singing. The voice was coming from outside, but close. I looked out the window and saw Emma, or what had been Emma, walking between the RVs. She was singing a lullaby, her voice sweet and clear. Behind her, the shapes from the first night were back, moving through the camping area. I watched them converge on the Minnesota RV where Tom was hiding. They surrounded it completely. I saw Tom through his window, saw him see them, saw his face twist in terror. The shapes pressed against the motorhome from all sides. Then they started to sink into it. They didn't break through the walls or windows. They just merged with the vehicle itself, becoming part of its structure. I saw Tom backing away from the walls, trapped in the center of his rig as the shapes closed in. Then his lights went out, and I couldn't see anything more. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark. Time had become meaningless. It felt like hours, but my phone said only minutes had passed. Or maybe it was the other way around. I couldn't tell anymore. Eventually, I heard tapping on my door. Soft, polite tapping. "Lily?" It was Marla's voice. "Lily, are you in there? We need help. Kevin's hurt." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to open the door. But I'd seen what happened when Christine came back, when Susan changed, when Emma walked out of the swamp. "Lily, please. Kevin's bleeding. He needs help." I pressed my face against the window trying to see her. She was standing just outside my door, her back to me. I couldn't see her face. "Turn around," I said. "Let me see you." She turned. Her face was normal, human. Her eyes were her own eyes, not black pits. She looked terrified and exhausted and desperate. But I remembered what the thing in Emma had said, about guilt and regret opening doors, about things that feed on death and time. And I remembered my sister's face in the water, and how I'd read my book while she drowned, and how I'd been carrying that for 26 years. "I'm sorry," I said to Marla through the door. "I'm so sorry." I turned away from the window. Behind me I heard Marla's voice change. The words became distorted, angry, inhuman. Something struck my door hard enough to crack it. I climbed into my driver's seat and started the engine. I didn't know where I could go. The road was gone, the swamp surrounded us. But I had to try. I put the RV in drive and pressed the accelerator. The vehicle lurched forward faster than it should have. The camping area blurred around me. I saw shapes moving between the rigs, too fast to distinguish. I saw fire somewhere to my left. I saw the boat launch rushing toward me. I slammed on the brakes, but the RV didn't stop. It plunged off the concrete launch and into the water. Dark water closed over the windshield. The vehicle was sinking, the swamp swallowing it whole. This was how I died last time, I thought. This is always how I die. I tried the door, but water pressure held it shut. Water was already pouring in through the vents, rising fast. I climbed into the back looking for another way out. The emergency window. I'd forgotten about the emergency window. I smashed it with a hammer from my toolbox and squeezed through as water flooded the RV. I kicked my way up, my lungs burning, toward what I hoped was the surface. I broke through into air and darkness. I swam toward what I thought was shore, my clothes heavy, my body exhausted. My hands touched mud and I pulled myself out of the water, collapsed on my stomach, coughing and gasping. When I could breathe again, I looked around. I wasn't at the camping area anymore. I was somewhere else in the swamp, surrounded by cypress trees and Spanish moss. The moon was full overhead, though I could swear it had been a new moon the night before. And in its light I could see shapes moving through the water. Moving toward me. I stumbled to my feet and ran. Branches whipped my face. My shoes stuck in mud. Behind me I could hear them following, not splashing, not breaking branches, just that smooth, purposeful movement. I ran until I couldn't run anymore, then I hid in a hollow tree, pressed myself into the smallest space possible, and waited. The shapes passed by. I could hear them searching, methodical and patient. They knew I was here somewhere. They had all the time in the world, but they didn't find me that night. Or what I think was night. Time had no meaning anymore. When light filtered through the moss, I emerged from my hiding place. I was lost, surrounded by swamp in every direction. But I started walking anyway, choosing a direction that felt right, even though I knew that feeling had betrayed me before. I walked for what felt like days. I had no food, no water. I should have been dying of thirst, but I never got thirsty. I should have been starving, but I never got hungry. I just walked through the endless swamp, following a path that existed only in my mind. And then I found the road, not the access road to the camping area. Highway 352, pavement and yellow lines and real human traffic. A semi-truck blew past me, its horn blaring, and I stumbled out onto the shoulder and waved my arms. A car stopped. An older couple, tourists probably, their faces concerned. "Are you all right?" the woman asked. "Do you need help?" I couldn't speak, I just nodded. They took me to the nearest town, to a hospital. The doctors checked me over, found nothing physically wrong beyond dehydration and exposure. The police questioned me about the camping area, About the people who'd been there. They'd already found the scene. They'd found bodies. Marcus, Jake, and Tom. They'd found the RVs. They were looking for the others. The Hendersons. Susan. Riley. Christine. But there was no sign of them. Just vehicles and blood and signs of violence. I told them everything I could remember. I told them about the shapes in the night and the symbols drawn in mud and the road that disappeared. I told them about how Christine and Susan had changed. I told them about the thing that had been Emma. They nodded and wrote it all down and exchanged glances that said they thought I was in shock or traumatized or possibly insane. They said I should rest. They said someone from psychiatric services would be by to talk to me. They said I was very lucky to have survived. But I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I'd failed again. Like I'd let them all die, just like I'd let Claire die. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. Psychiatric evaluation. They asked about the trauma, about my state of mind, about whether I'd consider self-harm. I answered their questions. I took their pills. I pretended to feel better. On the 4th day, they discharged me. A social worker drove me to a hotel in Henderson and made sure I had money for food and clothes. She gave me phone numbers to call if I needed anything. She was kind and concerned and completely useless. I've been in this hotel room for 2 weeks now. The police have stopped calling. The investigation is ongoing, they say. But they haven't found the missing people. They found my RV at the bottom of the boat launch, but they couldn't explain how I'd survived its sinking or how I'd gotten so deep into the swamp. The official theory is that something in the water, chemicals or parasites or something natural, caused mass hallucinations and violent behavior. That Christine and Susan were affected first, that they killed Marcus and Jake and Tom, and that the others fled into the swamp and are still out there somewhere, lost or dead. It's a comfortable theory. It fits the known facts. It doesn't require believing in anything impossible. But I know what really happened. I know we were caught in something ancient and hungry, something I'd called with my guilt and regret. I know that the loop hasn't ended. I know that someday, maybe tomorrow, maybe in 10 years, I'll feel that pull again. I'll have those dreams. And I'll go back. Because here's what I haven't told anyone. What I've been too afraid to say. I remember other times now. Not just one loop, dozens, maybe hundreds. I've been to Atchafalaya Basin before, many times. Each time I try to save them. Each time I fail. Each time I die. And then I wake up in Houston with no memory of what happened. Just a vague sense of unease, until the dreams start again and call me back. This is the first time I've escaped. The first time I've survived. But I don't know if that's better or worse. Because now I remember everything. Now I carry not just Claire's death, but all their deaths. Marcus and Jake and Tom and the Hendersons and all the others I've failed to save across all the loops I can now remember. And I know I'll go back. I know I'll try again. Because that's what the loop does. It feeds on regret. And regret makes you return to the place where you failed. Desperate to do it right this time. To save them this time. To prove you're not the person who lets people die. I've tried to fight it. I've tried to convince myself that I won't go, that I'll stay here, that I'll break the cycle. But I can feel it already. The pull. The dreams are starting again. Last night I dreamed of the boat launch and the cypress trees in the dark water. In the dream, Claire was standing at the edge of the swamp. She wasn't 6 anymore. She was the age she would have been if she'd lived. 32. She looked at me with sad eyes and said, "You can't save us, Lily. You never could. The only person you're trying to save is yourself." When I woke up, there were boot prints in the carpet around my bed, circling it, measuring. They're getting ready for me to come back. They're waiting. And I know that no matter how hard I fight it, eventually I'll return to Atchafalaya Basin. I'll park in spot number 7, I'll meet the other campers, I'll watch it all happen again. Maybe next time I'll remember in time to save them. Maybe next time I'll figure out how to break the loop. Maybe next time I'll finally forgive myself for letting Claire die and the cycle will end. Or maybe I'll fail again. Maybe I'll die again. Maybe I'll wake up in Houston with no memory and start it all over. The only thing I know for certain is that it's not over. It's never over. The loop continues, fed by my guilt, my regret, my desperate need to prove I'm not the person who lets people die. And maybe that's the real horror, not the things in the swamp, not the possessed bodies or the impossible geometry or the violence. The real horror is knowing that I'm trapped in a cycle of my own making, and the only way out is to forgive myself for something I'll never believe I deserve forgiveness for. I've written all this down because I need someone to know what happened. What's happening? What will keep happening? I'm going to mail this to my coworker, someone who barely knows me, because anyone closer would try to help and I don't want anyone else getting pulled into this. If you're reading this and you see a news story about a woman named Lily Brooks who died in Atchafalaya Basin in Louisiana, know that it wasn't an accident. Know that I was trying to save people I couldn't save in a loop I couldn't break, paying for a sin I couldn't forgive. And if you ever feel drawn to a place you've never been, if you ever start having dreams about somewhere you're sure you'll die, don't go. Don't try to prove it's not real. Don't think you can change what's coming. Because some loops can't be broken, some guilt can't be escaped, some deaths have already happened over and over in ways that time doesn't work the way we think it should. I can feel it calling me back now. The swamp, the camping area, spot number 7. The boot prints around my bed are fresh this morning. The dreams are getting stronger. My GPS keeps showing a route to Henderson even though I haven't entered any destination. I know I'll go. Maybe tomorrow, maybe tonight. I'll drive those 6 hours. I'll pull into that clearing surrounded by cypress trees. I'll meet the people I've failed to save countless times before. I'll watch it all happen again. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I'll remember too late that I've been here before. That I'm living it again. That I'm going to die again. Unless this time is different, unless this time I get it right. But deep down, in a place I don't want to acknowledge, I know the truth. I've probably thought that every time before. Every loop, I've probably believed this time would be different. And every time, I've been wrong. The really terrifying part? I can feel other memories trying to surface now. Not just loops at Atchafalaya. Other places. Other times. Other groups of people I've failed to save. How many times have I lived and died? How many times has my guilt reset the world around me? Am I even Lily Brooks anymore? Or am I just a pattern of guilt and regret that keeps repeating, wearing the name and life of a woman who let her sister drown 26 years ago? I don't know. I can't know. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the loop isn't trying to teach me anything. Maybe it's just feeding. Using me. Using my guilt to fuel its endless cycle of death and rebirth. I'm going to mail this now before I lose the nerve. Before the dreams get so strong I can't resist anymore. Before I get in my car and drive to Louisiana and start it all over again. If you're reading this, remember me. Remember that I tried. Remember that I'm still trying. And if you ever find yourself in Atchafalaya Basin, in a camping area surrounded by cypress trees and Spanish moss, and you see an RV in spot number 7, drive past. Don't stop. Don't look too closely. Because if you do, you might see me there, living it again, dying again, caught in a loop I'll never escape. The boot prints are at my door now. I can hear footsteps in the hallway, circling, measuring. The dreams are so strong I can barely tell what's real anymore. Is this hotel room real? Or am I already back there, already trapped, already dead? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore except that it's starting again, and I can't stop it. And I don't know if I even want to stop it because maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. This time I'll save them. This time I'll break the loop. This time I won't let anyone die. But Claire's voice whispers in my ear, patient and sad. You always think that, Lily, and you're always wrong. The door is opening now. Or maybe I'm opening it. Maybe I'm getting in my car. Maybe I'm already on Highway 190 heading east. Maybe I'm already pulling into the camping area, parking in spot number 7, meeting the Hendersons and the Grants and Marcus and Christine and Jake and Riley. Maybe I'm already dead. Maybe I've always been dead. Maybe the real Lily Brooks drowned with her sister 26 years ago, and everything since has been the death dream of a guilty child, cycling through her punishment forever trying to save people who were never real. in a place that exists only in the space between her dying thoughts. I don't know anymore, I can't think straight. The dreams are too strong. The memories are too many. The guilt is too heavy. I'm going back. I'm always going back. I'll always go back. And I'll always fail. And I'll always die. And I'll always wake up in Houston, and the cycle will continue. Forever, because some sins can't be forgiven, some deaths can't be undone, some loops can't be broken, and some people like me, who let their little sisters drown while they read their books, are meant to die over and over and over again, carrying their guilt through eternity, never learning, never escaping, never finding peace. The footsteps are right outside my door, or maybe they're footsteps around my RV. I can't tell anymore where I am or when I am or if I am, but I know where I'm going. I'm going back to Atchafalaya. I've lived it before. I know this place, and I don't survive the second time, or the third time, or the 100th time. I never survive, but I always try again, and that might be the worst horror of all. Story 2. My name is Ethan Lewis. Every night is the same, except something new waits each time I fall asleep. I need to write this down while I still remember who I am, while I still know what's real. The others don't believe me yet, or maybe they do and they're just too scared to admit it. Either way, I'm keeping this record because if we don't get out of here, someone needs to know what happened at Fish Lake National Forest. It started 3 weeks ago, though I'm not sure that timeline means anything anymore. Marcus called me on a Tuesday. I was sitting in my apartment in Salt Lake City, staring at my laptop screen without really seeing it. The divorce papers had been finalized the week before, and I'd been moving through my days like a ghost, present but not really there. You need to get out of that apartment, Marcus said without preamble. We're taking the RV to Fish Lake for the weekend. You, me, Jenna, and Riley if he can get off work. I don't know, man. I've got a lot of... You've got nothing, Marcus interrupted. I checked your calendar. We're leaving Friday morning. That was Marcus. Blunt, practical, and usually right. We'd been friends since high school, and he knew me well enough to know I'd been drowning in my own head since Sarah left. The thought of getting out, of breathing different air, suddenly seemed like the only reasonable thing in the world. Riley joined us at the last minute. My younger brother had always been the spontaneous one in the family, the musician who lived in a studio apartment in Provo and played gigs at coffee shops. He showed up Friday morning with his guitar and a backpack, grinning that easy smile that made everyone around him relax. Road trip, he said, climbing into the RV. Just like old times. Jenna was already inside, organizing the small kitchen. She'd been dating Marcus for about a year and I liked her immediately. She was calm and competent, with a dry sense of humor that balanced Marcus's intensity. She worked as a nurse at Primary Children's Hospital and had seen enough real trauma that nothing much seemed to rattle her. Ethan, she said, giving me a quick hug. It's good you're coming. You look like you need this. The drive to Fish Lake took about 3 hours. We wound through the mountains, autumn turning the aspens gold and orange against the evergreens. Marcus drove the RV with easy confidence while Riley played guitar in the back and Jenna read a paperback mystery. I sat in the passenger seat and watched Utah slide past, feeling something in my chest loosen for the first time in weeks. Fish Lake National Forest is famous for pando, the largest living organism on Earth. A massive grove of aspen trees that are all actually one tree, connected by a single root system. The RV campground we'd reserved was on the edge of that grove, a small site with maybe a dozen spots, most of them empty this late in the season. We arrived around 2 in the afternoon. The ranger at the entrance, a weathered man in his 60s named Dale, checked our reservation and gave us a map. You folks picked a quiet time, he said. Only 3 other sites occupied. Weather's supposed to be clear all weekend. Perfect, Marcus said. Our spot was at the far end of the campground, nestled between towering aspens that whispered in the breeze. The RV fit easily in the cleared area, with a picnic table and fire ring nearby. Beyond our site, the forest stretched dense and golden, the late afternoon sun turning everything honey-colored. This is beautiful, Jenna said, stepping out and turning in a slow circle. Riley was already pulling his guitar out. I'm going to write so many songs out here. We spent the rest of the afternoon setting up camp. Marcus got the RV leveled and hooked up to power. Jenna and I gathered firewood from the area behind our site. Riley explored, coming back periodically to show us things he'd found: an interesting rock, a bird's nest, tree bark with strange patterns. There are these weird marks on some of the trees back there, he said, showing me a photo on his phone, like someone carved symbols or something. I looked at the image. The bark showed what might have been deliberate cuts, but they were old and weathered. Probably from other campers over the years. Maybe, Riley said, but he didn't sound convinced. We made dinner on the RV's small stove, pasta with vegetables and chicken. We ate outside at the picnic table as the sun set, the temperature dropping quickly. The forest around us grew darker, the aspens becoming silver ghosts against the deepening blue sky. I forgot how quiet it gets out here, Jenna said. You can actually hear yourself think. That's the point, Marcus said, reaching over to squeeze her hand. We built a fire as full darkness fell. The flames pushed back the night, creating a bubble of warm light. Riley played guitar, soft melodies that drifted up into the trees. I felt myself relaxing in a way I hadn't in months. The divorce and the apartment and the endless empty weekends all feeling very far away. Around 11, Marcus stood and stretched. I'm calling it. Early hike tomorrow? Sounds good, I said. We put out the fire and headed into the RV. It had a small bedroom in the back where Marcus and Jenna slept, and a fold-out couch and dinette that converted to beds for Riley and me. The space was cramped but cozy, and I fell asleep quickly to the sound of wind in the aspens. I woke to someone shaking my shoulder. Ethan, wake up. I opened my eyes. Riley was standing over me, his face pale in the darkness. What time is it? I mumbled. 3:06 exactly. I've been watching the clock. I sat up, trying to shake off sleep. What's wrong? There's someone outside. That woke me fully. I listened. At first I heard nothing but the wind. Then faintly I caught it. Footsteps on gravel, slow and deliberate, circling the RV. Did you look out? I whispered. I tried. I can't see anyone, but I can hear them. They've been walking around for like 10 minutes. I moved to the window and carefully pulled back the curtain. Outside, the campground was dark except for the faint glow of our neighbor's RV about 50 yards away. The moon was barely a sliver, providing almost no light. I couldn't see anyone moving, but as I watched, I heard the footsteps again, crunch, crunch, crunch on the gravel. Should we wake Marcus? Riley asked. Before I could answer, the footsteps stopped. The silence was absolute, so complete it felt heavy. We waited, barely breathing. Then a voice called out from the darkness. Help me. It was a woman's voice, thin and desperate. It seemed to come from the trees behind our RV. Please, someone help me. Riley moved toward the door. I grabbed his arm. Don't. Someone needs help, he said. At 3 a.m, in the middle of a national forest. We looked at each other. The voice called out again. Please, I'm lost. This time, I caught something wrong with it. The words were right. The emotion seemed right. But there was a flatness underneath. Like someone reading lines. I don't think that's real, I said quietly. Riley stared at me. What do you mean? Just wait. Let's wait. We stood there in the dark RV, listening. The voice called out twice more, each time from a slightly different direction. Then it stopped. After another 5 minutes of silence, Riley finally went back to bed. I stayed up, watching through the window, but nothing else happened. When I woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the RV windows. The smell of coffee filled the small space. Marcus was at the stove making eggs. Morning, he said cheerfully. Sleep okay? I looked at Riley, who was still in his bed scrolling through his phone. Did you hear anything last night? Marcus shook his head. Out cold. Why? Someone was walking around the RV, Riley said, not looking up from his phone. Around 3. and there was a woman calling for help. Jenna came out of the bedroom, pulling her hair into a ponytail. A woman? We heard someone, I confirmed. Footsteps circling the RV and a voice asking for help. Did you go check on her? Jenna asked, immediately concerned. It didn't sound right, I said, feeling foolish in the daylight. Something was off about it. Marcus frowned. Off how? I don't know. It just felt wrong. We ate breakfast in silence. In the bright morning light, the whole incident seemed less sinister and more confusing. Maybe it had been another camper who'd gotten turned around. Maybe we'd overreacted. I'll mention it to Dale when we head out for our hike, Marcus said finally. Make sure everyone's accounted for. We cleaned up and got ready for the day. The plan was to hike one of the trails through the aspen grove, maybe 6 or 7 miles. Jenna packed sandwiches and water. Riley brought his camera. I grabbed my jacket, noting that the temperature had dropped overnight. As we were about to leave, I noticed something strange. On the picnic table, someone had arranged small rocks in a circle, maybe 8 inches in diameter. In the center was a larger stone with what looked like a symbol scratched on it, 2 lines crossing at odd angles. Did one of you do this? I asked. They all came over to look. Marcus shook his head. Weird. It wasn't here last night, Jenna said. I would have noticed when we were cleaning up. Riley took a photo of it. Add it to the collection of weird shit. First the symbols on the trees, now this. We decided to leave it and headed toward the ranger station. Dale was there, sitting behind a cluttered desk, working on paperwork. Morning, folks, he said. Heading out for a hike? Yeah, Marcus said. Hey, were there any reports last night, someone calling for help? Dale's expression shifted slightly, becoming more alert. No. Why? Marcus explained what Riley and I had heard. Dale listened without interrupting, his face neutral. What time was this? He asked. 3:06, Riley said. I checked. Something flickered across Dale's face. Recognition, maybe, or concern, but it passed quickly. I didn't hear anything, he said. But sound carries strange in the aspens. Could have been from one of the other sites. Maybe someone having a nightmare or watching something on their phone. It was a reasonable explanation, but I noticed he didn't quite meet our eyes when he said it. If you hear it again tonight, call me, Dale said, writing a number on a piece of paper. I'm on site 24/7. We thanked him and headed out on the trail. The hike was beautiful, the aspens creating cathedral-like tunnels of gold. Jenna and Marcus walked ahead, hand in hand. Riley took photos constantly, stopping to capture light through leaves or interesting bark patterns. I've been thinking about what we heard, Riley said as we walked. What if it was some kind of animal, like a mountain lion or something that sounded weird? Maybe, I said, but I didn't believe it. The hike took about 4 hours. We stopped for lunch by a small stream, the water so clear you could count the pebbles on the bottom. The day was perfect. Cool air, warm sun, no bugs. For a while, I forgot about the voice in the night. We got back to camp around 4. The rocks on the picnic table had been rearranged. Now there were 2 circles, concentric, with more symbols scratched on stones in the center. Okay, that's actually creepy, Jenna said. Marcus walked around the RV, checking the ground. No footprints, but the ground's pretty hard here. Should we tell Dale? I asked. And say what? Someone's playing tic-tac-toe with rocks while we're gone? Marcus shook his head. Let's just put it away and keep an eye out. I took a photo of the arrangement before Marcus scattered the rocks. Something about it bothered me beyond the obvious strangeness. The symbols looked deliberate, purposeful, like they meant something. That evening we stayed close to the RV. Marcus started a fire early and we cooked hot dogs and beans. Riley didn't play guitar. We sat around the fire as darkness fell, more aware of the forest around us than we had been the night before. This is stupid, Marcus said finally. We're letting some prankster ruin our trip. You think it's a prank? Jenna asked. What else would it be? Jenna didn't answer. None of us did. We went to bed earlier than the night before, around 10:30. I lay in my converted dinette bed staring at the ceiling. listening to the wind. I could hear Marcus and Jenna talking quietly in the back bedroom. Riley was already asleep on the fold-out couch, his breathing deep and even. I dozed off sometime after 11. I woke to someone shaking my shoulder. Ethan, wake up. I opened my eyes. Riley was standing over me, his face pale in the darkness. The exact same words, the exact same inflection. "What time is it?" I asked, though I already knew. 3:06 exactly. I've been watching the clock. My mouth went dry. "Riley?" "There's someone outside." I sat up slowly. This wasn't possible. This wasn't... The footsteps started. Crunch, crunch, crunch on gravel circling the RV. "Did you look out?" I whispered, even though I'd said these exact words before. "I tried. I can't see anyone, but I can hear them." I moved to the window and pulled back the curtain. Everything was the same. The dark campground, the faint glow of the neighbor's RV, the sliver moon. The footsteps stopped. The silence pressed down. "Help me." The same voice. The same desperate, flat quality. "Please, someone help me." Riley moved toward the door. I grabbed his arm, harder this time. "Don't. Someone needs help. Riley, listen to me. This happened before, last night, exactly like this." He stared at me. "What are you talking about?" "Everything. You waking me up at 3:06, the footsteps, the voice. It's all exactly the same." "Ethan, you're freaking me out. Please, I'm lost." The voice called from the trees. Riley pulled away from me, but I held on. "Wait," I said. "Just wait. It's going to call out twice more from different directions and then it'll stop." We stood there. The voice called out again to the left of where it had been. Riley's eyes widened. Then it called once more to the right. Then silence. "How did you know that?" Riley whispered. "Because it happened. Exactly this way. Last night." "That's not possible." "I know." We waited in the darkness, but nothing else happened. Eventually, Riley went back to bed. I sat by the window, watching the forest, trying to understand. When I finally fell asleep, it was almost dawn. I woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. Marcus was at the stove making eggs. "Morning," he said. "Sleep okay?" The words hit me like a punch. I looked at Riley, who was staring at his phone, his face pale. "Did you hear anything last night?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. Marcus shook his head. "Out cold." "Why?" Riley looked up at me. Our eyes met. He remembered. "Someone was walking around the RV," Riley said slowly. "Around 3, and there was a woman calling for help." Jenna came out of the bedroom, pulling her hair into a ponytail. "A woman?" It played out exactly the same. Every word, every gesture. We went through breakfast, Marcus's suggestion to tell Dale, getting ready for the hike. When we reached the picnic table, the rocks were there, arranged in a circle with the symbol in the center. "Did one of you do this?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. Marcus came over to look. "Weird." "It wasn't here last night," Jenna said. "I would have noticed when we were cleaning up." Riley's hands were shaking as he took the photo. "Ethan," he said quietly. "What's happening?" I couldn't answer. We went to see Dale. He gave us the same responses, wrote down the same phone number. We went on the same hike, stopped at the same stream for lunch. When we got back, the rocks were arranged in 2 concentric circles again. This time, I didn't let Marcus scatter them. I studied them carefully, trying to memorize the patterns. The symbols looked even more complex than I'd noticed before. Not random marks, but deliberate designs. "Ethan, what are you doing?" Jenna asked. "Testing something," I said. "Tonight I want everyone to stay awake. All of us together." "Why?" Marcus asked. "Because Riley and I are experiencing the same day over, and I think it resets when we fall asleep." There was a long silence. "That's crazy," Marcus said finally. "I know, but it's happening." Riley backed me up, describing in detail what he remembered from the previous night, or what should have been the previous night. Marcus and Jenna listened, their skepticism gradually shifting to concern. Even if what you're saying is true, Jenna said carefully, staying awake might not change anything. Time loops in stories don't usually work like that. Stories, Marcus said. We're talking about stories. Do you have a better explanation? I asked. He didn't. That night we all stayed up. We kept the fire burning and the RV lights on. We played cards and told stories and drank coffee. As 3:06 approached, we went silent, watching, waiting. The footsteps started exactly on time. We all heard them this time. Slow, deliberate, circling the RV. Marcus grabbed a flashlight and went to the door. Jenna tried to stop him, but he shook her off. Someone's fucking with us, he said, and I'm going to find out who. He threw open the door and swept the flashlight across the campground. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating trees and gravel and nothing else. The footsteps stopped immediately. Marcus stepped outside. Hey, I know you're out there. Silence, then from the forest. Help me. Marcus turned the flashlight toward the trees. Who's there? Please, someone help me. Show yourself. The voice moved, impossible fast, circling around to the other side of our camp. I'm lost. This isn't funny, Marcus shouted. The voice came from directly behind him. Please. Marcus spun, and his flashlight beam caught something. Just for a second I saw it. A shape in the trees, tall and wrong, its proportions not quite human. Then it was gone, melting back into the darkness. Marcus stumbled backward into the RV, slamming the door. His face was white, his hands shaking. What the fuck was that? Nobody answered. We sat in the RV, all the lights on, and waited. The voice didn't call out again. At 5:30, dawn started to break. We'd made it through the night awake. So what now? Jenna asked. Do we leave? We try, I said. We pack up and we get out of here. We started breaking camp as soon as it was light enough. Marcus worked on disconnecting the RV while Riley and I gathered our scattered supplies. Jenna went to dump the waste tanks. Everything felt wrong. The morning too quiet. The forest too still. I was loading the last of the firewood into the RV's storage compartment when I heard Jenna scream. We ran. She was standing by the dump station, pointing at the ground. There, scratched into the dirt in letters 3 feet tall, were the words, "You can't leave." Marcus grabbed her, pulling her back. Get in the RV, now, everyone. We piled in. Marcus started the engine and it roared to life. He put it in drive and hit the gas. We lurched forward, gravel spraying behind us. We made it about 50 yards before the road disappeared. Not metaphorically, the actual road vanished. Where there had been a clear path through the trees, there was now solid forest. Aspens growing so close together, nothing could pass between them. Marcus slammed on the brakes. That's impossible, he said. We just drove in on that road yesterday. Try going around, Jenna said. Marcus put the RV in reverse and backed up, then tried a different angle. Same result. Wherever he pointed the RV, the forest was impassable. It was as if the campground had been sealed off. The ranger station, Riley said. Dale, he'll know what's happening. We got out and ran toward the ranger station. It was only a quarter mile, but the trees seemed to close in as we ran, the path narrowing. By the time we reached the station, we were single file, aspens pressing in on both sides. The ranger station was empty. Not just empty, abandoned. Dust covered the desk. The papers Dale had been working on were yellow with age. The calendar on the wall showed a date from 15 years ago. This doesn't make sense, Jenna said, her voice breaking. We were just here, yesterday. He gave us a phone number. Riley pulled out his phone and dialed the number Dale had written down. We heard it ring somewhere distant, echoing strangely through the trees. After a dozen rings, someone picked up. Fish Lake Ranger Station, a woman's voice said. This is Ranger Thompson. We need help, Riley said. We're trapped at the RV campground. The roads are blocked and... I'm sorry, the voice interrupted. That same flat quality we'd heard in the night. There's no campground at Fish Lake. Was there anything else I could help you with? The line went dead. We stood in the abandoned ranger station. the impossibility of our situation finally sinking in. Marcus sat down heavily on Dale's old chair, his head in his hands. Jenna was crying quietly. Riley kept looking at his phone as if it could provide answers. I walked to the window. Outside, I could see our RV in the distance, and beyond it, the forest. The aspens swayed in a wind I couldn't feel. "We need to think this through," I said. "There's something here that doesn't want us to leave. Some kind of entity or force or—" "Don't," Marcus said. "Don't start talking about supernatural bullshit. There's a rational explanation." "Then what is it?" He didn't answer. We walked back to the RV in silence. The sun was climbing higher, but it didn't seem to warm anything. We sat at the picnic table, none of us speaking, watching the forest. Around 2 in the afternoon, Riley suddenly stood up. "I'm going for a walk." "Riley, no," I said. "We need to stay together. I just need to clear my head. I'll stay close to camp." He walked toward the trees before any of us could stop him. Jenna started to go after him, but Marcus held her back. "Give him a few minutes. We're all losing it." But a few minutes turned into 10, then 20. We called Riley's name, but there was no answer. We started searching, moving carefully through the aspens, calling out. The forest seemed to swallow our voices. We found him after an hour. He was standing in a small clearing, his back to us, perfectly still. "Riley?" I called. "Man, you scared us." He didn't turn around. I approached slowly. "Riley, come on, let's go back." When he finally turned to face us, I knew immediately that something was wrong. His expression was blank, his eyes unfocused. He looked at us but didn't seem to see us. "Riley?" Jenna said softly. "Are you okay?" He smiled. It was Riley's smile, but there was something off about it. The corners of his mouth pulled just slightly too far, held just slightly too long. "I'm fine," he said. His voice sounded like his voice, but flatter, like a recording. "What happened?" Marcus asked. "Where did you go?" "I just walked. I saw—" He paused, his smile never wavering. "I saw things. In the trees." "What things?" "Faces. Watching. They showed me." "Showed you what?" I asked. Riley's smile widened. "How it works. The loop. We wake up every morning and do the same things. The hike, the ranger, the rocks. And every night at 3:06 she calls. Except each time, she gets closer. Each time something new happens." "Who's she?" Jenna whispered. "The woman in the trees. She's been here a long time, she's so lonely." This wasn't Riley, I knew my brother. His cadence, his humor, the way he talked. This thing wearing his face was something else. "We need to get back to the RV," I said, reaching for his arm. He pulled away, still smiling. "We can't leave. You know that now. We're part of it. Part of the forest." Marcus stepped forward. "Riley, buddy, you're in shock or something. Come back with us and we'll figure this out." Riley's head tilted at an odd angle, like a bird studying something interesting. "Marcus, always so practical. But you can't fix this. No one can." He started walking back toward camp, moving with a strange, gliding gait. We followed, none of us speaking. When we reached the RV, Riley sat down at the picnic table and just stared at the forest, that horrible smile never leaving his face. "What do we do?" Jenna whispered to me. "I don't know." That evening, Riley didn't eat. He just sat at the table, watching the trees as the sun set. When we tried to talk to him, he responded with short, flat answers that didn't quite make sense. Marcus suggested we physically restrain him, keep him safe until whatever was affecting him wore off. "You can't protect me," Riley said without looking at us. "She's already inside." Jenna started crying again. I put my arm around her, but I felt as lost as she looked. We didn't build a fire that night. We all stayed inside the RV, watching Riley through the window. He remained at the picnic table, motionless, except for that smile. At 3:06, the footsteps started, but this time they were inside the RV. We froze, listening to something walk slowly from the back bedroom toward us. The floor creaked under weight that shouldn't be there. Marcus grabbed a knife from the kitchen. Jenna and I backed against the door. The footsteps stopped right behind where Marcus stood. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, very softly, we heard breathing. Slow. Wet. Wrong. "Help me," whispered a voice directly behind Marcus. He spun, slashing with the knife, but there was nothing there. The breathing stopped. The footsteps started again, moving to the front of the RV toward us. "Get out!" I shouted, fumbling with the door. We tumbled out into the night. Riley was still at the picnic table, but now he was standing, his arms spread wide, his face turned up to the starless sky. "She's here," he said. "Can you feel her?" Something moved in the trees. Not one thing, but many. Shapes flowing between the aspens. Too tall and too thin. The footsteps had multiplied. I could hear dozens of them now, circling the campground, getting closer. "The RV," Marcus said. "Get back in the—" But when we turned, the RV was gone. In its place was just empty space, as if it had never been there. "This isn't real," Jenna said. "This can't be real." Riley laughed, and it wasn't his laugh at all. "Real, unreal, it doesn't matter. We're hers now. We've always been hers." The shapes in the trees moved closer. I could almost make them out now. Tall figures with too many joints. Faces that were almost human but wrong in ways that hurt to look at. "Run!" I grabbed Jenna's hand and bolted into the forest. Behind us, I could hear Marcus shouting Riley's name, then his footsteps as he followed. We ran blindly through the aspens, branches whipping at our faces. The footsteps followed, matching our pace exactly. I don't know how long we ran. Time felt elastic, moments stretching and compressing. We'd passed the same trees over and over, the forest rearranging itself around us. Finally, we burst into a clearing and stopped, gasping. We were back at our campsite. The RV was there, the fire ring, the picnic table. But everything was wrong. The RV was rusted and covered in vines, the table collapsed, the fire ring filled with bones. Riley stood in the center of it all, no longer smiling. His face was blank, tears running down his cheeks. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice was his own again, broken and terrified. "I tried to fight it. I tried. Riley." I started toward him. "Don't," he said. "I'm not really here. Not anymore. None of this is." He looked around the ruined campsite. "This is what it really looks like. What we really are." "I don't understand," Jenna said. Riley met my eyes. "We never left the first night, Ethan. When she called to us at 3:06. We heard her, and that was enough. We've been here ever since, living the same day over and over, trapped in the loop. But it's degrading, breaking down. Each cycle, we lose a little more. Each cycle, she gets a little closer." "That's not possible," Marcus said, but his voice was weak. "Look around you," Riley said. "Really look." I looked down at my hands. They were translucent, fading. I could see through them to the ground below. Jenna screamed. Her feet were sinking into the earth, becoming roots. "No," I said. "No, no, no." "The loop breaks tonight," Riley said. "It always breaks on this cycle, and when it does, we become part of the forest, part of her, just like everyone else who came before." The shapes in the trees were visible now, dozens of them, hundreds maybe. They were people or had been once, their bodies stretched and merged with the aspens, faces frozen in silent screams. "There has to be a way out," I said desperately. Riley shook his head. "The only way out is to wake up. But we can't. Because we're already awake. We've been awake this whole time." The ground beneath our feet began to shift. I felt roots wrapping around my ankles, pulling down. Jenna was screaming. Marcus was trying to run, but his legs wouldn't move. "I'm sorry," Riley said again, his body starting to dissolve into the shadows. "I should have stopped you from coming here. I should have—" His voice cut off as he disappeared entirely, absorbed into the forest. I fought against the roots, but they were too strong. I was sinking, being pulled into the earth, becoming part of something vast and ancient and hungry. My vision was fading, the world blurring at the edges. And then suddenly, I woke up. I'm in my apartment in Salt Lake City. It's Tuesday morning. My phone is ringing. When I answer, it's Marcus. "You need to get out of that apartment," he says. "We're taking the RV to Fish Lake for the weekend. You, me, Jenna, and Riley, if he can get off work." My hands are shaking so badly I almost drop the phone. "Marcus," I say, "we can't go to Fish Lake." "What? Why not?" We can't. Please trust me." There's a pause. "Ethan, are you okay? You sound weird." "I'm fine, let's go somewhere else. Anywhere else." "Okay," he says slowly. "We can talk about it. I'll call you back." He hangs up. I sit in my apartment staring at my hands, which are solid and real. I look out the window at Salt Lake City, bustling and alive and normal. But on my coffee table, there's something that wasn't there before. A small rock with a symbol scratched on it, 2 lines crossing at odd angles. And from somewhere far away, or maybe from inside my own head, I hear a voice whisper, 306. My name is Ethan Lewis. Every night is the same, except something new waits each time I fall asleep. And I don't know if I ever really woke up. Story 3. My name is Daniel White. Every step I took through Gifford Pinchot National Forest, the trees bore new scars, freshly cut, as if someone followed me. I need to write this down while I still remember everything clearly, while I can still distinguish what was real from what my mind might have invented in those 5 days. The police don't believe me. My therapist thinks I'm processing trauma through delusion, but I know what I saw. I know what happened to Sarah. It started as a stupid corporate retreat. Our manager, Tom Brennan, thought a week of unplugging and reconnecting with nature would solve the fact that our sales team was falling apart. 6 of us crammed into 2 rented RVs, driving from Seattle to some campground in Gifford Pinchot that Tom's brother-in-law recommended. The group was me, Tom, Sarah Chen, Marcus Webb, Jennifer Kowalski, and David Park. We'd worked together for 3 years at a mid-sized tech company, selling enterprise software to companies that barely understood what they were buying. The job was soul-crushing. We all knew it. This trip wasn't going to fix that. Sarah and I had been sleeping together for about 4 months. Nothing serious, just something that happened after too many late nights at the office. She wanted to keep it quiet, and I was fine with that. Marcus knew, though. He'd seen us leaving the parking garage together one night and gave me a look that said he'd figured it out. He never mentioned it, which somehow made it worse. Jennifer was the newest hire, 23 and fresh out of college, still enthusiastic about quarterly targets and client retention rates. David was the opposite, 52, divorced, counting down the days until retirement. Tom was just Tom, middle management incarnate, desperately trying to seem relatable while enforcing policies he didn't create. We arrived at the Pine Ridge RV Park on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. The place was mostly empty, just our 2 vehicles, and a beaten-up camper van at the far end of the loop. The camp host, an older woman named Margaret who walked with a severe limp, checked us in and handed Tom a photocopied map of the trails. "Most folks clear out after Labor Day," she said, eyeing our group with what seemed like disappointment. "You'll have the place mostly to yourselves." "Perfect," Tom said with forced enthusiasm. "That's exactly what we need. Time to really connect as a team." Margaret just nodded and limped back to her trailer without another word. The campground was nice enough. Each RV site had a concrete pad, a picnic table, and a fire ring. The sites were spaced far apart, separated by thick stands of Douglas fir and western hemlock. Our loop was at the edge of the campground, backing up to dense forest. Tom and Jennifer took one RV. Marcus, David, Sarah, and I took the other. That first night was fine. We built a fire, Tom handed out beers, and we made awkward small talk while mosquitoes bit our ankles. David told the same stories he'd told 100 times before. Jennifer tried to start a game of truth or dare that nobody wanted to play. Sarah sat across from me, and we carefully avoided eye contact. I went to bed around 11, climbing into the narrow bunk above David's. Through the thin RV walls, I could hear Marcus snoring almost immediately. Sarah was in the converted dinette bed, David in the rear bedroom. The RV smelled like chemical toilet and the previous renter's cooking. I didn't sleep well. The mattress was too thin, and every time David shifted in the bed below me, the whole structure creaked. Around 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps outside. Just someone walking past our RV, their shoes crunching on gravel. They paused near our door for a moment, then continued on. When I woke up around 7, Marcus was already outside, making coffee on a camp stove. The morning was cold and gray, typical for Western Washington in fall. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Not really." "Yeah, me neither." Sarah was up half the night, heard her moving around, opening and closing the door. I glanced back at the RV. Sarah was still asleep, or at least she wasn't moving around. Tom emerged from his RV looking terrible, his hair sticking up at odd angles. "Who's ready for a hike?" he announced with manufactured enthusiasm. We spent breakfast planning our route. The map Margaret had given us showed several trails of varying difficulty. Tom wanted to do the Ridge Loop Trail, an 8-mile circuit that would take most of the day. Nobody objected, though I noticed David wincing as he stood up from the picnic table. "You good?" I asked him. "Just my knee. It acts up sometimes. I'll manage." We set out around 9, leaving the RVs behind. The trailhead was at the far end of the campground, marked by a weathered wooden sign. Tom insisted on taking point studying the map like he was navigating hostile territory. Jennifer walked beside him, still trying too hard. Marcus and I fell back with David while Sarah trailed slightly behind everyone. The forest was dense and quiet. Our footsteps on the trail seemed too loud, and nobody was talking much. The trees here were massive, hundreds of years old, their trunks thick enough that 2 people couldn't wrap their arms around them. Moss covered everything, the ground, fallen logs, even the bark of standing trees. We'd been walking for maybe an hour when I noticed the first cut. It was on a hemlock about 10 feet from the trail, a fresh gouge in the bark roughly at head height. The wood beneath was pale and raw, obviously recent. I didn't think much of it at the time. Probably someone marking their way, though it seemed unnecessary on a well-maintained trail. 15 minutes later, I saw another one. Same height, same rough diagonal slash. This one was on a fir tree about 20 feet off the trail, barely visible through the undergrowth. "You guys seeing these marks?" I asked. Marcus looked where I was pointing. "Yeah, I noticed a couple. Probably hunters or something." "It's not hunting season," David said. "Maybe they're from earlier in the year." But they didn't look old. The exposed wood was too pale, too clean. No weathering, no discoloration. We kept walking. I started watching for more cuts, and I found them, not on every tree but regularly enough to form a pattern. They were always on the side of the tree facing away from the trail, always at about the same height, and they were always on our left side, deeper into the forest. Nobody else seemed particularly interested. Tom was too focused on his map and his role as fearless leader. Jennifer was taking pictures with her phone, though she complained about not having signal. Sarah was quiet, which wasn't unusual for her. She'd been more withdrawn than normal since we'd arrived. Around noon, we stopped for lunch at a small clearing where the trail overlooked a ravine. Tom pulled out sandwiches he'd made that morning, wrapped in plastic bags. We sat on logs and ate in silence, listening to the forest sounds. Birds, mostly. Wind in the trees. The distant rush of water from somewhere below us. "This is nice," Jennifer said, trying to fill the quiet. "Peaceful." "It's okay," Marcus said. He was checking his phone, probably hoping for signal. "Would be better with Wi-Fi." Tom started talking about team dynamics and trust exercises, but I stopped listening. I was looking at the trees around our lunch spot. 3 of them had fresh cuts all on the side facing away from where we'd come from, like something was marking a path parallel to ours, deeper in the forest. "When do you think those were made?" I asked, interrupting Tom mid-sentence about synergistic collaboration. "What?" "The cuts on the trees. When do you think they were made?" Tom looked annoyed at the interruption. "I don't know, Daniel. Does it matter?" They look fresh. Really fresh. Probably from trail maintenance or something. Can we get back to... There's no reason for trail maintenance to mark trees that far from the trail. Sarah spoke up for the first time that day. Maybe we should head back. We're only halfway through the loop, Tom said. It's just a few cuts on trees. Probably from loggers or rangers or something perfectly normal. In a national forest? David said. They don't log in national forests. Then I don't know. But we're not turning back just because Daniel's getting spooked by some marks on trees. I let it drop, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The cuts bothered me in a way I couldn't articulate. It wasn't just that they were there. It was how methodical they seemed, how deliberately placed. We finished lunch and continued on the trail. The loop curved back toward the east, descending gradually. My knees were starting to ache, and I could tell David was struggling. He'd fall behind, then hurry to catch up, his face tight with pain. Around 2 in the afternoon, Sarah stopped walking. "I need a break," she said. Tom looked back, clearly impatient. "We just had lunch an hour ago." "I don't feel well." She did look pale, now that I was really looking at her. There were dark circles under her eyes, and she was breathing harder than she should have been from the mild exertion. "Fine," Tom said. 5 minutes. Sarah sat down on a boulder at the side of the trail. I moved to sit beside her, but she shook her head slightly. "Not now, not here." So I stayed standing, pretending to examine the map over Tom's shoulder. That's when I saw it. About 30 feet into the forest on a massive Douglas fir, there was a fresh cut. But this one was different. It wasn't a single diagonal slash like the others. This was a symbol. 3 lines intersecting to form something like a crude asterisk or star. "Look at that one," I said, pointing. Everyone turned to look. "Okay, that's weird," Marcus admitted. "Maybe it's a trail marker," Jennifer suggested. "Like showing the way back if you get lost?" "It's pointing away from the trail," I said. We all stared at it for a moment. The mark was clearly fresh, the exposed wood almost white against the dark bark. And now that I was looking more carefully, I could see another marked tree behind it, and another beyond that, forming a line that led deeper into the forest. "Someone's marking a route," David said quietly. "Or marking territory," Sarah added. She'd stood up from her rock and was staring at the symbol with an expression I couldn't read. "We should go." "We are going," Tom said, "back to camp, completing the loop like we planned." But his voice had lost some of its forced confidence. He started walking again, faster now, and the rest of us followed. I kept glancing to our left into the trees, looking for more marks. They were there, the same star-shaped symbol repeated at irregular intervals, always leading away from the trail. We'd been walking for another 20 minutes when Jennifer screamed. We all spun around. She was pointing at something ahead on the trail, her hand shaking. At first I couldn't see what had spooked her. Then I did. There was something hanging from a branch that stretched over the trail about 20 feet ahead. It looked like a bundle of sticks tied together with something dark. Rope, maybe, or vine. As we got closer, I realized the sticks were arranged in the same star pattern we'd seen carved into the trees. Nobody said anything. We just stood there staring at it. "Okay, this is officially creepy," Marcus said. Tom walked up to it, trying to project calm authority. "It's probably just something left over from some pagan ceremony or nature worship thing. You know how people are." "Nobody's been on this trail," David said. "We haven't seen another person all day." "That doesn't mean—" "Look at the string," I interrupted. "It's not rotted or weathered, it's new." The binding holding the sticks together was twine, the bright white kind you'd buy at a hardware store. It hadn't been there long. Sarah had moved to the edge of the trail, staring into the forest. "There's another one," she said softly. She was right. About 40 feet to our left, deeper in the trees, another stick bundle hung from a branch, and beyond that, barely visible, another. "They're leading somewhere," Jennifer whispered. Tom pulled out his phone, held it up, searching for signal. Nothing. "We should keep moving. The sooner we get back to camp, the better." Nobody argued. We walked past the hanging bundle, everyone giving it a wide berth. The trail continued its gradual descent, winding between massive trees and overexposed roots. I kept my eyes on the forest to our left, and I kept seeing them. The star marks on trees, the hanging bundles, all forming a line parallel to our path. Whatever was making these marks, it was moving with us. Or we were moving with it. The hike back took 3 hours. Nobody talked. David was limping badly by the end, and Sarah looked worse. Her skin had taken on a grayish tint, and she was sweating despite the cool air. When we finally emerged from the trailhead into the campground, it felt like returning to civilization after weeks in the wilderness. It was almost 6 o'clock. The sun was getting low, casting long shadows across the RV loop. Margaret's trailer was lit from inside, but we didn't see her. "Well," Tom said, trying and failing to sound upbeat, "that was certainly an adventure." "That was fucked up," and Marcus said flatly. "It was just some weird trail markers. There's probably a perfectly reasonable explanation." "What explanation?" Tom didn't have an answer. He just shook his head and headed to his RV. Jennifer followed him without a word. The rest of us stood there in the fading light, not quite ready to separate. "I'm going to ask Margaret about it," David said. "She'd know if there was something weird going on in these woods." "Good idea," I said. "I'll come with you." We walked over to the camp host's trailer, leaving Marcus and Sarah at our RV. David knocked on the metal door, and after a moment Margaret opened it. She looked even older than I remembered from check-in, her face deeply lined and her eyes set in permanent suspicion. "Yes?" "Sorry to bother you," David said. "We were wondering if you could tell us about some trail markers we saw today." "Symbols carved into trees?" Margaret's expression didn't change. "What trail?" "Ridge Loop." "There aren't any markers on Ridge Loop. These weren't official markers. They were fresh cuts like someone made them recently, and there were stick bundles hanging from trees." Something flickered across Margaret's face, recognition maybe, or concern, but it was gone almost immediately. "People do stupid things in the forest sometimes. Probably just kids or tourists playing around." "It didn't look like playing around," I said. "It looked deliberate, like someone was marking a route." Margaret stared at me for a long moment. "Best to stay out of the woods after dark, and stay on the trails." We did stay on the trails. "Keep it that way." She started to close the door, then paused. "How many of you are there?" "6. 6 came back?" The question sent a chill through me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, 6 went out. 6 came back, all accounted for." "Yes, why?" "No reason, good night." She shut the door. David and I looked at each other. "That was weird," he said. Everything about today was weird. We headed back to our RV. Marcus had started a fire, and Sarah was sitting on the bench at the picnic table staring into the flames. She still looked sick. "You okay?" I asked her. She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was distant. "Did you feel like we were being watched today?" "What do you mean?" "On the trail, the whole time, like something was keeping pace with us through the trees." I had felt that, actually, but I'd been trying not to think about it. Probably just our imagination getting the better of us. Probably, but she didn't sound convinced. Dinner was a subdued affair. Tom and Jennifer joined us, and we ate hot dogs and chips around the fire. Nobody wanted to talk about the hike, but nobody could talk about anything else. The conversation kept circling back to those marks, those symbols, those bundles. "I looked it up," Jennifer said, holding up her phone. "The star pattern thing. It's called a witch's mark or a hex sign. It's supposed to be for protection." "Protection from what?" Marcus asked. "Depends on the tradition. Evil spirits, bad luck, curses. Lots of different cultures have used similar symbols." "So someone was marking protection symbols through the forest," David said. "Why?" Nobody had an answer. Around 10, we started heading to bed. Sarah went into our RV first, then Marcus. David lingered by the fire, poking at the logs with a stick. "I don't like this place," he said quietly. "It's just a campground." "It's not the campground. It's the forest." There's something wrong with it. I didn't disagree, but I didn't want to admit it either, so I just nodded and headed to bed. That night, I dreamed about walking through the forest. In the dream, I could see the star marks on the trees glowing faintly in the darkness. They formed a path, and I followed it, deeper and deeper, until I came to a clearing I didn't remember from the hike. In the center of the clearing was a figure standing perfectly still. I couldn't make out any features. It was just a silhouette, person-shaped but wrong somehow. Too tall maybe, or standing at an angle that didn't make sense. In the dream, I knew I shouldn't look at it directly, but I couldn't help myself. I turned to face it fully. That's when I woke up. The RV was dark and stuffy. I could hear David snoring below me and Marcus breathing heavily in his bed. The clock on the wall said 3:17 a.m. I needed to pee. I climbed down from my bunk as quietly as I could and made my way to the tiny bathroom at the back of the RV. On my way, I passed Sarah's bed. It was empty. I checked the rest of the RV. She wasn't there. The door was closed but unlocked. I pulled on my shoes and stepped outside. The campground was lit by widely spaced lights along the loop road, casting pools of yellow illumination surrounded by deep shadows. Everything was quiet except for the wind and the trees. Sarah was standing at the edge of the campsite, right where the gravel ended and the forest began. She was facing the trees, wearing just the t-shirt and sweatpants she'd been sleeping in. "Sarah?" She didn't turn around. I walked over to her, the gravel crunching under my feet. When I got close enough, I could see she was shivering. Her arms were wrapped around herself and her breath was misting in the cold air. "Sarah, what are you doing out here?" "I can hear them," she said softly. "Hear what?" "The trees. They're talking." My skin went cold. "Sarah, you're not making sense. Let's go back inside." "Every night I hear them. They whisper. They want me to come into the forest." I touched her shoulder and she finally turned to look at me. Her eyes were wrong, not focused, like she was looking through me rather than at me. "You need to sleep," I said, gently steering her back toward the RV. She let me guide her, walking mechanically. When we got back inside, she climbed into her bed without a word. I stood there for a moment, watching her. She was facing the wall, her body completely still. I went back to my bunk but didn't sleep. I just lay there in the dark, listening to the sounds of the RV and the forest beyond, wondering what was happening to Sarah. In the morning, she didn't remember any of it. "I went outside last night," she said, looking genuinely confused. "Are you sure? You were standing at the edge of the forest. You said you could hear the trees talking." "I don't remember that at all." She looked frightened now. Maybe I was sleepwalking? Maybe, but I'd seen her eyes. That wasn't sleepwalking. Tom wanted to do another hike that day, a different trail. Nobody was enthusiastic about the idea, but nobody wanted to admit why. We packed day packs with water and snacks and set out around 10, taking a trail that headed south from the campground. This trail was narrower, less maintained. Branches hung low over the path, and we had to push through undergrowth in places. David was limping from the start, and Sarah still looked pale and exhausted. We'd been walking for maybe 30 minutes when I saw the first mark. It was the same star pattern, carved fresh into a cedar tree about 15 feet from the trail. On our left side again. "Shit," Marcus said. He'd seen it too. "Maybe it's the same trail network," Jennifer suggested. "Maybe all the trails around here have these marks." But we kept walking and we kept seeing them, always on the left, always leading away from the trail we were on, and they were fresh. I was sure of it now. These hadn't been here yesterday. These had been made recently, very recently. We stopped after an hour, gathering in a small clearing to drink water and pretend this was normal. "We should go back," David said. He was pale, his face slick with sweat despite the cool air. "We've barely started," Tom protested. "I don't care. This is wrong. Those marks are following us." "That's impossible." "Then explain it. Explain how every trail we take has fresh marks on trees, always on the same side, always leading into the forest." Tom didn't have an explanation. None of us did. Sarah had wandered a few feet from the group, staring into the trees. "There's a path," she said. "What?" "A path. Look." She was pointing into the forest, to the left where all the marks led. At first I didn't see anything. Then I did, a faint depression in the undergrowth, a line where the ferns were bent and broken. Not an official trail, just a track, like something had walked through recently. "We shouldn't follow that," I said. "I know." But Sarah kept staring at it, her expression distant. We started back to camp. Nobody suggested continuing the hike. The return trip was quiet, everyone lost in their own thoughts. I kept checking over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone following us, but there was never anyone there. When we got back to camp around 2, Margaret was waiting at our site. She looked different in daylight, older, more fragile. Her limp seemed worse, and she was leaning heavily on a wooden cane. "We need to talk," she said. Tom tried to take charge. "If this is about us leaving a mess..." "It's not about a mess. It's about the forest." We all stopped, suddenly very attentive. Margaret looked at each of us in turn, her gaze sharp despite her age. "You've seen the marks." It wasn't a question. "Yes," David said. "What are they?" "Protection. Or they're supposed to be. Someone's trying to keep something contained." "Keep what contained?" Marcus asked. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. 20 years ago, a family went missing in these woods. Parents and 2 kids. They found the parents 3 days later hanging from a tree about 2 miles from here. The kids were never found. "Jesus," Jennifer breathed. "Since then, people have reported strange things. Sounds in the forest, footsteps following them, and symbols carved into trees, always fresh, always in the same area. Some people think it's the kids, still out there, changed by whatever happened to them. Others think it's something worse." "Why are you telling us this?" I asked. Margaret looked directly at me. "Because you've been marked. Whatever's in those woods, it's noticed you, and that means you need to be careful." "How do you know we've been marked?" Tom demanded. "Because the symbols are moving. Every group that gets marked, the symbols follow them. Get closer, until..." She stopped. "Until what?" "Until someone goes into the forest. Then the marks stop." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to have died. "We're leaving," Tom said finally. "Right now. We'll pack up and go." "That won't help. Not if you've been marked. It follows." "That's insane. There's no supernatural force following us because of some marks on trees." Margaret just shook her head. "Believe what you want. But don't go into the forest at night. And watch each other. Sometimes people go in without meaning to, sleepwalking or in a fugue state. The forest calls them." She limped away, leaving us standing in stunned silence. "She's crazy," Tom said, but his voice lacked conviction. "She knew about the marks," David pointed out. "So what? Probably some local legend that everyone around here knows about. That doesn't make it real." But Tom was already moving toward his RV, and I could see the fear in his eyes. We spent the afternoon packing. Tom wanted to leave immediately, but it was already getting late, and the idea of driving unfamiliar mountain roads in the dark didn't appeal to anyone. We decided to stay one more night and leave first thing in the morning. That evening, nobody wanted to be alone. We all gathered around the fire, sitting close together as darkness fell. The forest around us seemed to press in, full of shadows and movement that could have been branches in the wind, or could have been something else. "I think we should take shifts," David suggested. "Stay awake in pairs, make sure nobody wanders off." "You're taking this seriously?" Jennifer asked. "After what Margaret said?" "Yes, I'm taking it seriously." We worked out a schedule. David and Marcus would take first watch from 10 to 1. Jennifer and Tom would take 1 to 4. Sarah and I would take 4 to dawn. Around 9, Sarah went to bed early. She'd barely spoken all day and she still looked ill. The rest of us stayed by the fire, talking in low voices about everything except what was really on our minds. At 10, Jennifer and Tom headed to their RV. I lay down in my bunk but couldn't sleep. Through the window near my head, I could see David and Marcus sitting by the fire, occasionally throwing on more wood. The flames cast jumping shadows across the campsite. I must have dozed off eventually, because the next thing I knew, someone was shaking my shoulder. It was Marcus. "Your turn." I checked my phone. 4:03 a.m. I climbed down from my bunk, pulled on a jacket, and stepped outside into the cold pre-dawn darkness. David was still by the fire, which had burned down to embers. He looked exhausted. "Anything happen?" I asked. Jennifer and Tom said it was quiet during their shift. We didn't see anything either, but I kept hearing things, branches breaking, footsteps maybe. Could have been animals. Could have been. He headed to his RV, and I was alone by the dying fire. Sarah was supposed to join me, but I didn't want to wake her. She needed the sleep. I threw a few more logs on the embers and watched the flames catch. The campground was utterly silent. Even the wind had stopped. That's when I realized something was wrong. Sarah's bed was visible through the RV window. I could see the lumped shape of her sleeping bag, but something about it looked wrong. Too flat, too still. I stood up and walked to the RV, opened the door as quietly as I could. In the darkness, I could barely make out the bunks. I clicked on my phone's flashlight and pointed it at Sarah's bed. The sleeping bag was there, arranged to look like someone was inside it, but Sarah was gone. Shit. I checked the rest of the RV, already knowing she wasn't there. Her shoes were missing. Her jacket was gone from its hook. I went back outside and circled the campsite looking for any sign of her. The bathroom facilities were at the center of the loop, but she wasn't there. Tom and Jennifer's RV was dark and silent. Then I saw them. Footprints in the dirt leading from our RV to the edge of the forest. Small prints. Sarah's size. I followed them to where the campsite ended. There, at the tree line, I could see the prints continuing into the undergrowth. And on a tree about 10 feet into the forest, clearly visible even in the dim light, was a fresh mark, the star symbol. Sarah had gone into the forest. I ran back to wake the others. Within minutes, all 5 of us were gathered at the tree line with flashlights, staring at Sarah's footprints disappearing into the darkness. "We have to go after her," I said. "In there?" Jennifer's voice was shaking. "In the dark? We can't leave her. She's been gone for at least 2 hours, Marcus said. She could be anywhere by now. So we start looking now." Tom looked like he wanted to argue, but even he could see there was no choice. "Fine. But we stay together. No one separates for any reason." We grabbed better flashlights from the RVs and started into the forest, following Sarah's trail. The footprints were easy to spot in the soft earth, heading roughly northwest, toward where we'd seen all those marks on yesterday's hikes. The forest at night was a different world. Our flashlight beams cut through the darkness, creating moving shadows that seemed to follow us. Every branch that snapped underfoot sounded like a gunshot. Every rustle in the undergrowth could have been anything. We'd been walking for maybe 20 minutes when Marcus stopped abruptly. "Look at this." He was pointing his light at a tree trunk. There was a mark, the star symbol, fresh and raw, and another one on the next tree, and another beyond that. "They're leading us," David said. "Leading us where?" Jennifer whispered. We kept following Sarah's footprints in the marked trees. They led us deeper into the forest, away from any trails I recognized. The ground began to slope downward, and I could hear water running somewhere ahead. Then David grabbed my arm. "Stop, listen." We all froze. At first I heard nothing but the stream and the wind. Then I heard it, a voice, singing, faint and distant, but unmistakably human. A woman's voice, Sarah's voice. "This way," I said, moving faster now. We scrambled down a steep embankment, half sliding in the loose dirt. At the bottom was a small creek, maybe 8 feet across. And on the far side, illuminated by our flashlights, was Sarah. She was standing in a small clearing, completely still, facing away from us. She was still singing, but I couldn't make out the words. It wasn't English. It wasn't any language I recognized. "Sarah!" I called out. She stopped singing. Slowly, she turned to face us. Even from 15 feet away, I could see that something was wrong. Her face was slack, expressionless. Her eyes were open but unfocused. She looked like a sleepwalker, but worse, less human. "Sarah, it's us," I said, wading into the stream. The water was freezing, soaking through my shoes. "We're here to take you back." She tilted her head, studying us with those empty eyes. "She's not right," Tom said from behind me. "Something's wrong with her." I reached the far bank and climbed out, water streaming from my jeans. "Sarah, can you hear me?" She smiled. It was the worst thing I'd ever seen. A smile that didn't reach her eyes, that didn't involve any other facial muscles. Just her mouth, stretching wider than it should have been able to. "We need to get her back to camp," Marcus said. "Maybe she's hypothermic or in shock or something." I took a step toward her. "Sarah, we need to go. It's not safe out here." "It's been waiting," she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "All this time in the trees, in the earth, waiting for someone to listen." "What are you talking about?" "The marks aren't protection. They're a summoning. Every mark, every symbol calling out." And someone finally answered. She took a step toward us, and I instinctively took a step back. "Sarah, you're not making sense. You're sick. Let us help you." "I'm not Sarah anymore." She said it so calmly, so matter-of-factly that for a moment I didn't process the words. Then I did, and ice flooded my veins. "What do you mean you're not Sarah?" "Sarah went into the forest." She answered the call. And something else came back. Tom let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "This is insane. She's delirious. Grab her and let's go." But nobody moved. We all just stood there, flashlights trained on Sarah's smiling face while she stood perfectly still in the clearing. "You can't leave," she said. "You've been marked. The forest knows you now. It will always know you." Jennifer started crying. "I want to go home. I want to go home right now." "Then go," Sarah said. "Run back to your metal boxes. Drive away. It won't matter. The marks will follow. The forest will follow. You've been chosen." Marcus raised his flashlight like a weapon. "Stay back. We're leaving, and you're not stopping us." Sarah laughed. It was a horrible sound, like rocks grinding together. "I'm not stopping you. I'm welcoming you." She raised her arms, and in the beam of our flashlights, I could see marks on her skin. The star pattern carved into her forearms and hands. Fresh cuts, bleeding slowly. "Jesus Christ," David breathed. "The forest needs to feed," Sarah said, still smiling that terrible smile. "It's been so long, so hungry, but now it has us. All of us." "We need to go," I said. "Right now." We backed away, keeping our lights on Sarah. She didn't follow, just stood there watching us with those dead eyes. When we reached the stream, we turned and ran, stumbling through the water and scrambling up the far bank. We ran through the forest, branches whipping at our faces, roots trying to trip us. Behind us, I could hear Sarah laughing, or something wearing Sarah's voice. I don't remember most of that run. It was just terror and darkness and the desperate need to get away. At some point, I realized we were lost. The trees all looked the same, and I had no idea which direction we'd come from. Then, impossibly, I saw the glow of the campground lights through the trees ahead. We burst out of the forest into our loop, gasping and wild-eyed. The sky was getting lighter. Dawn was maybe an hour away. "We're leaving," Tom said, his voice ragged. "Right now, we're leaving and we're never coming back." Nobody argued. We ran to our RVs and started throwing gear inside, not bothering to organize anything. Just throw it in and go. I was in the middle of collapsing the awning on our RV when I heard Tom scream. I spun around. He was standing by his RV's door, pointing at something. I ran over and saw what had made him scream. Carved into his RV's door was the star symbol. Fresh. The white fiberglass was gouged deep, exposing the layers beneath. She did this, Jennifer sobbed. While we were in the forest, she came back and did this. Marcus checked our RV, same thing. The star symbol carved into multiple places. The door, the sides, even the windshield. We need to go, David said. Right now. We climbed into our RVs and started the engines. Tom pulled out first, driving too fast for the narrow campground road. We followed, our damaged RV making strange noises. I looked back once as we pulled onto the main road. Margaret was standing outside her trailer watching us go. Even from a distance, I could see her expression. She looked sad, resigned, like she'd seen this before. We made it back to Seattle by noon, driving straight through without stopping except for gas. Tom and Jennifer dropped off their RV and disappeared. I haven't heard from either of them since. David took a leave of absence from work and moved to Arizona. Marcus quit and took a job in another city. Me, I'm still here, still trying to figure out what happened, still trying to sleep without dreaming about Sarah's empty eyes and that terrible smile. The police went back to the campground. They found no sign of Sarah, no footprints, no blood, nothing. They searched the forest for 3 days with dogs and helicopters. Nothing. Margaret claimed she never spoke to us about any local legends. The marks on the RVs could have been vandalism, the police said. Kids or unhappy locals. They think Sarah ran off, that she'd been planning it and used the camping trip as an opportunity. They think the rest of us are suffering from some kind of shared delusion brought on by stress and fear. Maybe they're right. Maybe we all cracked simultaneously and imagined the whole thing. But I know what I saw, and I know what's been happening since. Because yesterday I noticed something while walking to work. There was a mark on a tree in the park near my apartment. A star pattern, carved fresh into the bark. And this morning there was another one, on a lamppost 2 blocks from my building. The marks are following me, just like Margaret said they would. Every day they're closer, and every night I hear Sarah's voice in my dreams, singing in that language I don't understand, calling me back to the forest that's been waiting. That's always been waiting. I don't know how much longer I can resist. I'm writing this down so someone will know what happened. So when I disappear, and I will disappear, I'm sure of that now, there will be some record. The forest marked us, all of us who went into those woods, and the forest always collects what it's marked. I can feel it now, even here in my apartment, surrounded by people and traffic and normalcy. I can feel the forest calling, the trees whispering, the marks getting closer, and the worst part of me wants to answer. Part of me wants to go back, to walk into those trees and let whatever took Sarah take me too. Because at least then, the waiting would be over. At least then, I'd finally understand what Sarah understood. What the forest showed her in those dark hours before dawn. My name is Daniel White, and tomorrow I think I'm going back to Gifford Pinchot. Not because I want to, but because I don't think I have a choice anymore. The marks are on my door now. Fresh, deep, carved while I slept. The forest has called, and I'm running out of reasons not to answer. Story 4. My name is Olivia Young. I'm writing this down because I need to remember it correctly. I need to keep saying it to myself. My name is Olivia Young, and I'm 34 years old, and I teach 9th grade English in Portland, Oregon. These are facts I know about myself. The RV park outside Moab, Utah was my sister's idea. Jessica had been planning this trip for months. Her, me, and her husband, Tom. A week in the desert, hiking the trails around Arches, sleeping under the stars in their 30-foot Winnebago. I'd never been in an RV before, and Jessica kept calling it glamping, which I thought was stupid but didn't say. I drove down from Portland on a Friday in late September. The park was about 10 miles outside Moab proper, tucked into a red rock canyon with maybe 20 spots total. Most were empty when I arrived. The summer tourists were gone and the winter snowbirds hadn't shown up yet. Jessica and Tom had gotten there the day before and already had the RV set up in spot 14, which backed up against the canyon wall. When I pulled in with my Subaru, Jessica came out waving. She looked good, tan and relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years. Marriage suited her. "Took you long enough," she said, hugging me. How was the drive? Long. I'm exhausted. Tom came out carrying a beer. He was a big guy, former college football player who'd gone soft around the middle. Pleasant enough, if boring. Want one? He asked. God, yes. The RV had everything. A full kitchen, bathroom with shower, a bedroom in back, and a convertible dining area where I'd be sleeping. It was nicer than my apartment. Jessica gave me the tour while Tom grilled burgers outside. The sun was setting, turning the canyon walls orange and red. That first night was fine. We ate, drank, sat around the campfire. There were 3 other RVs in the park, a retired couple from Texas 2 spots down and some families with kids farther up. The woman at the check-in office had been friendly when I'd registered, asked if we needed anything. Normal stuff. I slept well that first night, exhausted from the drive. The second day, Saturday, we hiked. Tom and Jessica wanted to do Devil's Garden at Arches, an 8-mile loop. I wasn't in great shape, but figured I could handle it. We left early to beat the heat. The hike was beautiful but brutal. By mile 5, I was lagging behind. Jessica and Tom were ahead on the trail, and I told them to go on. I'd catch up. That's when I first heard it. I was standing alone on the trail drinking water when I heard someone whisper. It sounded close, maybe 10 feet away, but I couldn't see anyone. Just scrub brush and red rock. The whisper said, "Margot." I looked around. Nothing. No one else on this section of trail. "Margot," it said again, a woman's voice, soft, urgent. "Hello?" I called out. Silence. Just whined through the rocks. I stood there for maybe 2 minutes listening. When I didn't hear it again, I convinced myself it had been the wind or an echo from another trail. Sound did weird things out here. I caught up with Jessica and Tom at the next landmark and didn't mention it. What would I say? I heard a weird whisper. They'd think I was dehydrated. We finished the hike, drove back to the RV park, and spent the evening cooking and drinking wine. Jessica wanted to play cards, but I was tired. I went to bed early. That night I woke up around 3 a.m. The RV was dark and quiet. Jessica and Tom were asleep in the bedroom. I lay on the fold-out bed staring at the ceiling, feeling like something had woken me but not knowing what. Then I heard it again. Outside the RV. "Margot." Whispered. Urgent. Right outside the window near my head. I sat up slowly, heart pounding. The curtains were drawn, but I could hear someone breathing outside. Definitely a person. "Who's there?" I said, but my voice came out as a whisper too. The breathing stopped. Then footsteps, crunching on gravel, moving away from the RV. I got up and went to the window, pulled the curtain back slightly. The campground was dark except for one security light near the office. I couldn't see anyone. In the bedroom, Tom was snoring. Jessica slept silently, the way she always had. I checked the door. Locked. I'd locked it myself before bed. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I lay there, listening, but didn't hear the voice again. In the morning, I felt stupid. It had probably been someone walking past our spot, maybe drunk, maybe talking to themselves. The RV park was mostly empty, but not completely. Sound traveled weird out here. That had to be it. At breakfast, I mentioned it casually. "Did either of you hear someone outside last night?" Jessica looked up from her coffee. "No. What time?" "Around 3, I thought I heard someone walking around." Tom shook his head. "I didn't hear anything. You sure?" "Pretty sure." "Might have been that couple from Texas," Jessica said. "Maybe they went to the bathroom." "Maybe." But I knew what I'd heard. And the name, Margot, meant nothing to me. I didn't know anyone named Margot. Sunday, we drove into Moab for supplies. I was quiet during the trip, and Jessica asked if I was okay. "I'm fine, just tired." "You seem off." "I'm fine, really." We got groceries, stopped at a coffee shop, browsed some tourist shops, normal vacation stuff. I tried to shake the feeling from the night before. Tell myself I was being ridiculous. When we got back to the RV park in the late afternoon, I noticed there was a new RV in Spot 9, across the gravel road from us. A small airstream, maybe 20 feet, silver and beat up. I hadn't seen anyone around it when we left. New neighbors, Tom said. As we were unloading groceries, a woman came out of the airstream. She was probably in her 50s, thin with gray blonde hair pulled back. She waved at us. "Hi there," she called. Her voice was raspy like she smoked. "Hi," Jessica said, waving back. The woman walked over. Up close, I could see she looked rough. Tired eyes, weathered skin. She wore jeans and a flannel shirt despite the heat. "Just got in," she said. "This is a nice spot." "Yeah, it's quiet," Tom said. "You folks here for long?" "Till Friday," Jessica said. "Just a week. You?" "Not sure yet. Depends." There was something about her that made me uncomfortable, the way she looked at me specifically, like she was studying me. "Well, welcome," Jessica said, being polite. "Thanks. I'm Carol." "Jessica, this is my husband Tom, and my sister Olivia." Carol's eyes fixed on me when Jessica said my name. Just for a second, but I noticed. "Nice to meet you all," Carol said. "I'll let you get back to it." She walked back to her airstream and went inside. "She seems friendly," Jessica said. I didn't respond. Something about Carol bothered me, but I couldn't articulate what. That night after dinner, Tom wanted to go on a night hike to see the stars. There was a small trail that led from the RV park up into the canyon walls. Jessica was game, but I begged off. Said my legs were still sore from yesterday. "You sure?" Jessica asked. "The stars are supposed to be amazing." "I'm sure. You guys go. I'll clean up here." They left around 8 p.m., taking flashlights and water. I washed the dishes, straightened up the RV, and sat outside in a camp chair with a book. It was peaceful. The temperature had dropped, and there was a slight breeze. I must have been reading for 20 minutes when I heard it again. "Margot." I looked up. The voice had come from the direction of Carol's airstream. Her door was open slightly, and I could see light inside, but I couldn't see her. "Margot," the voice said again, definitely coming from her trailer. I stood up. My heart was beating fast. Why did this bother me so much? I walked over to the airstream. The door was ajar about 6 inches. I knocked on the frame. "Carol?" No answer. "Carol, are you okay?" Still nothing, but I could hear breathing inside. Heavy, labored breathing. "I'm going to open the door," I said. I pushed it open. The inside of the airstream was dim, lit only by a small lamp. Carol was sitting at the dinette table facing me. Her eyes were wide open, but she wasn't looking at me. She was staring past me at something I couldn't see. "Carol?" She didn't respond, just kept staring, breathing that heavy, labored way. I took a step inside. "Are you okay? Should I call someone?" Her mouth moved. "Margot," she whispered. "What?" I said. "What are you saying?" "Margot," she said again, louder now. "Margot, Margot, Margot." She kept saying it over and over like a mantra or a prayer. I backed out of the airstream and returned to our RV. I locked the door and pulled all the curtains. My hands were shaking. When Jessica and Tom came back an hour later, I told them what happened. Jessica wanted to check on Carol, but I convinced her not to. I said Carol seemed out of it, maybe drunk or high, and we should just leave her alone. "That's weird," Tom said. "Yeah." "You think we should tell the office?" "I don't know. Maybe in the morning if she's still acting strange." We went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing that voice, Carol's voice, saying that name over and over. Margot. 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 Around midnight, I got up to use the bathroom. As I was washing my hands, I looked at myself in the mirror, and for just a second, just a fraction of a second, I didn't recognize my own face. The feeling passed immediately, but it left me cold and shaking. Monday morning, Carol's airstream was gone. The spot was empty. "She left early," the woman from the office said when I asked. "Said she had to move on. Paid for one night. Did she seem okay?" "Fine, I guess." Why? No reason, just wondering. I felt relieved that Carol was gone, but also more unsettled. The whole interaction had been strange, and now I'd never get an answer about why she'd been saying that name. That afternoon, Jessica wanted to drive to Canyonlands, but I said I'd rather stay at the RV. I told her I needed to catch up on work emails, which was partially true. She and Tom left around 1. I spent an hour on my laptop, then got restless. The RV felt claustrophobic. I decided to take a walk around the park. There were more RVs now. It was Columbus Day weekend and the park was filling up. Families with kids riding bikes, older couples sitting in camp chairs, normal vacation people. I walked to the back of the campground where the trail started. There was a map on a wooden post showing the canyon loop. About 2 miles, easy terrain. I figured I'd do a quick hike before Jessica and Tom got back. The trail was well marked, winding up through red rocks and scrub brush. It was hot but bearable. I passed a couple coming down and we exchanged nods. After about 20 minutes, I reached a small clearing with a view of the valley below. I stopped to drink water and take a photo. That's when I saw the name carved into a rock. Margot scratched into the red sandstone, maybe 6 inches tall. Fresh. The edges were still sharp. I stared at it for a long time. This couldn't be a coincidence. That name, here, after everything. I took a photo of it with my phone, then continued on the trail. But now I was on edge, looking for any other signs or carvings. I didn't find anything else. When I got back to the RV, Jessica and Tom still weren't back. I looked at the photo on my phone. Margot, carved deep into the rock. I Googled the name. Margot. French origin, means pearl. A common enough name. Nothing unusual about it. But why was someone whispering it? Why was Carol saying it? Why was it carved on that rock? I tried calling Jessica, but her phone went to voicemail. No signal, probably. They'd be back soon. I was sitting outside when a man approached from the spot next to ours. He was maybe 60, gray beard, wearing a Grateful Dead t-shirt. "Excuse me," he said. "You're in spot 14, right?" "Yeah. I'm in 15. Just wanted to introduce myself. Name's Robert. Olivia." "Nice to meet you. How long you here for?" "Till Friday." "Us too. Wife and I come here every fall. Beautiful spot." "It is." He looked like he wanted to say something else but was hesitating. "Something wrong?" I asked. "No, just, has anyone been bothering you? Coming around your RV at night?" My stomach dropped. "Why do you ask?" "Last night someone was walking around our trailer. Around 3 a.m. I heard footsteps, looked out, couldn't see anyone. My wife said I dreamed it, but I know I didn't." "I heard something too," I admitted. 2 nights ago. Someone outside." "Huh. Well, probably just someone using the bathrooms, but it felt off, you know?" "Yeah. Anyway, just wanted to check. If you see anything weird, let me know." "I will." After he left, I felt worse. So I wasn't the only one hearing things. Jessica and Tom got back around 6. They were in good moods, talking about the hike they'd done. I didn't tell them about the carved name or my conversation with Robert. I didn't want to seem paranoid. That night I dreamed about Carol. She was standing outside the RV, whispering something I couldn't hear. I went to the window and she looked up at me. Her eyes were completely black. "Margot is here," she said. "Margot is waiting." I woke up gasping. It was 4 a.m. The RV was quiet and dark, and someone was crying outside, soft, broken sobbing. A woman's voice. I got up and went to the window, pulled back the curtain slightly. In the dim light from the security lamp, I could see a figure sitting on the ground between our RV and Robert's trailer. A woman in a white nightgown, hunched over, crying. "Jessica," I whispered. I went to the bedroom and shook my sister awake. "Jessica, wake up." "What?" she mumbled. "There's someone outside. A woman. She's crying." Tom woke up too. "What's going on?" "Someone's outside. Come look." They followed me to the window. Jessica peered out. "Where?" "Right there, between us and the next RV. Jessica squinted. I don't see anyone. What? She's right there. Tom looked too. Olivia, there's no one out there. I looked again. The space was empty. No woman. No one. She was just there. I saw her. Maybe she walked away, Jessica said, but she sounded worried. Are you feeling okay? I'm fine. I'm not seeing things. Maybe you were still half asleep, Tom suggested. I wasn't asleep, I was awake. They went back to bed, but I stayed up. I watched out the window until the sun came up. No one was there. But I know what I saw. Tuesday morning, I was exhausted and jittery. Jessica asked again if I was okay, and I snapped at her. We had a small argument. She said I'd been acting strange all week. I said she was being dramatic. Tom tried to mediate, but that made it worse. I ended up taking the car and driving into Moab alone. I needed space from them. I got coffee, walked around, tried to clear my head. At a bookstore, I found a local history section and browsed through it. One book caught my eye, Desert Mysteries, Strange Tales from Southeastern Utah. I flipped through it. Stories about UFO sightings, cryptids, disappearances. One chapter was about the canyon where our RV park was located. Back in the 1950s, a woman named Margot Ellis had disappeared while camping there with her family. She'd gone for a walk one evening and never returned. Search teams found nothing. The case was never solved. I stared at the page. Margot. The name. The book included a photo, a grainy black and white picture of a young woman with dark hair and a serious expression. The caption read, Margot Ellis, 1952. I bought the book and read the chapter in the car. The details were sparse. Margot Ellis, 24 years old, from Phoenix. She'd been camping with her parents and younger brother. On their third night, she'd gone for an evening walk around the campground. When she didn't return after an hour, they went looking. They found her shoes on the trail leading up into the canyon. Nothing else. The search lasted 2 weeks. They brought in dogs, volunteers, helicopters. No trace. The theory was she'd fallen or gotten lost, but the family insisted she knew the area well and was an experienced hiker. The case went cold. The family offered a reward, but no one ever came forward with information. The book ended the chapter with a line that made my skin crawl. Some locals claimed to still hear Margot calling from the canyon on quiet nights. I drove back to the RV park in a daze. This had to be connected. The whispers, Carol saying the name, the carving on the rock. But connected how? Was someone playing a prank? Was this some local legend people reenacted? When I got back, Jessica and Tom were packing up the RV. What are you doing? I asked. Jessica looked upset. We're leaving. What? Why? Something happened while you were gone. Tom came out of the RV. He looked shaken. Someone broke in. What? We went for a walk, came back, and the door was open. Someone had been inside. Did they take anything? No, nothing's missing. But... Jessica's voice trailed off. But what? Tom pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. It was of the RV's interior. On the wall above the dinette table, someone had written in what looked like red paint, Margot was here. My hands started shaking. Did you call the police? We reported it to the office, Tom said. They said they'd file a report, but there's not much they can do. We just want to get out of here. I don't blame you. We'll drop you at your car, Jessica said. You should leave too. I wanted to. Every part of me wanted to get in my Subaru and drive straight back to Portland, but something kept me rooted there. I think I'll stay, I heard myself say. They both stared at me. What? Jessica said. Olivia, no. This place is fucked up. We're all leaving. I need to figure out what's going on. Figure out what? Someone is messing with us. It's not safe. You guys go. I'll be fine. Olivia. Jessica, I'm staying. We argued for another 20 minutes, but I wouldn't budge. Finally, they agreed to leave without me, though Jessica was furious. Tom made me promise to call the police if anything else happened. They pulled out around 3 p.m. I watched them drive away, then sat in my car alone. The RV park was quiet now. Most people had left after Columbus Day weekend. There were maybe 4 other RVs scattered across the spots. I knew I was being stupid. I should have left with them, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was meant to stay. That Margot, whoever or whatever she was, wanted me here. I spent the evening in my car, doors locked. I'd moved it to the far end of the parking area, away from the RV spots. As the sun set, I watched the canyon walls turn dark. Around 8 p.m., I saw someone walking along the trail that led up into the canyon. A woman in a white dress. She was heading up, away from the campground. I got out of my car and followed. I know this sounds insane. I know I should have driven away right then. But I felt compelled, like I was being pulled. The trail was dark, but I had my phone flashlight. The woman was maybe 50 yards ahead of me, moving steadily upward. I called out to her, but she didn't respond. I followed for maybe 20 minutes. We were deep in the canyon now, far from the campground. My phone showed no signal. Finally, the woman stopped in a clearing, the same clearing where I'd seen the name carved into the rock. I approached slowly. "Hello?" She turned around. It was me, not someone who looked like me, not a twin or a doppelganger. It was me, Olivia Young, wearing the same jeans and jacket I had on, down to the scuff mark on my left boot. She smiled. "Hello, Olivia." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. "You came," she said. "I knew you would." "Who are you?" I finally managed. "You know who I am. You're not Margot." "No." She stepped closer. "Margot is gone, has been for 70 years, but she opened something when she disappeared, left something behind. What are you?" "I'm the name no one remembers. The voice in the dark. I'm what happens when someone disappears so completely that even their name becomes haunted." This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. "I've been waiting for someone like you," she continued. "Someone who would listen. Someone who would come looking." "Why me?" "Because you were ready to be erased." And I realized, with horrible clarity, that she was right. I'd been feeling it for months before this trip, a sense of fading, of becoming less visible, less real. The students at school who looked through me, the co-workers who forgot my name, even Jessica, who'd had to be reminded when my birthday was. I was disappearing slowly, and some part of me had known. "What do you want?" I asked. "A trade," she said. "You take my place, I take yours." "I don't understand." "You stay here, become the voice in the canyon, the name people whisper, and I get to leave. Get to be Olivia Young, get to exist again." "No. You don't have a choice. You came looking, you followed. That's how it works." She reached out and touched my face. Her hand was freezing cold. "Don't worry," she said. "Eventually you'll forget you were ever anyone else. It won't hurt. You'll just fade. Until you're nothing but a whisper." I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The last thing I remember clearly is her smile as she walked past me, down the trail, back toward the campground, back toward my car, back toward my life. Everything after that is hazy. I remember wandering the canyon, sitting on rocks, watching the sun rise and set. I remember seeing people on the trails and trying to talk to them, but they couldn't hear me. I remember forgetting things. What year it was, where I lived, what my mother's name was. And I remember, slowly, forgetting my own name. I'm writing this in a notebook I found in an abandoned campsite. I don't know how long I've been here. Weeks? Months? The pages are filled with scratches and marks, like someone trying to remember something important. My name is... I can't quite recall. It started with an O, I think. Olivia? No, that's not right. That's someone else's name. Someone who left. I know I had a sister once. She came looking for me, asked people if they'd seen me, but I couldn't make her see me. I tried to call out, but the only word that came was the wrong one. Margot. That's not my name, but it's the only sound I can make. Sometimes people hear me whispering. They get scared and leave. I don't want to scare them. I just want them to remember me. My name is. I saw her once down at the RV park. She was with a man and they were laughing. She looked happy. She looked like me, but she wasn't me. She'd taken my face and my name and my life. When she saw me watching from the canyon, she smiled and waved. I tried to run to her, to make her give it back, but I couldn't leave the canyon. Something kept me here. That was a long time ago. Or maybe it was yesterday. Time moves strangely now. Sometimes I see other people who can't leave either. Shadows in the rocks, whispers in the wind. We're all here, all the ones who got erased. We call to each other, but we can't remember our names. My name is. I know it starts with O, or maybe M. I can't remember. I can't remember anything except this place and the feeling of fading. If you're reading this, please leave. Don't follow the voices. Don't come looking for the names carved in the rocks. Don't try to solve the mystery, because if you do, you might end up like me, trapped in a canyon, whispering a name that isn't yours, waiting for someone to remember you, waiting to exist again. My name is Margot. No, that's not right, but it's the only one I have left.